Not every story begins with a choice. Some begin with a mistake. The kind of mistake so small you'd miss it if you blinked, yet so powerful it turned two strangers into parents, and pulled a woman with the purest of dreams into a world of money, power, betrayal, and love she never expected. Picture this: a sterile clinic, white walls, the promise of hope. A young woman, exhausted by loss and longing, signs the final line of paperwork. She believes she's one step away from the family she's always dreamed of. What she doesn't know is that in that moment, a simple error, or perhaps something more sinister, has already rewritten her life. Because when her test turns positive weeks later, the nurse doesn't smile. She hesitates, and when the results return, the truth is more shocking than anything she could imagine. The biological father of her unborn twins isn't the anonymous donor she carefully chose. It's one of the most powerful men in the country, a man she's never met, a man who doesn't lose. Now imagine you are her. Your hands tremble as you hold the papers. Every heartbeat inside you is a reminder that life has changed forever. Do you hide? Do you fight? Or do you pray this stranger, this billionaire CEO, will never find out? But fate doesn't play fair, because he does find out. And when he shows up, lawyers at his side, he says 4 words that freeze you in place: "Those children are mine." Friends, welcome to Mr. Roman's Story Vault. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found us. You've just stepped into a place where stories don't just entertain, they reach into the heart, pull out truth, and hold up a mirror to our lives. Here you'll find tales of resilience, of love, of second chances, stories that make you ask yourself, what would I do if it were me? And if you're a returning listener, welcome back and thank you. Truly, each time you come back, each time you listen, like, comment, or even just sit quietly with these stories, you remind me why I do this. You are the heartbeat of this channel. You've turned these stories into more than just words. You've made them a community, a family. And I want you to know, from the bottom of my heart, I love you for that. Every view, every share, every message of support, it all means more than you could ever imagine. You keep this vault alive, and you inspire me to dig deeper, write stronger, and tell stories that not only entertain but touch the soul. Before we begin, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. This is not just a story about a mistake. It's a story about what happens next, about the lines people cross when they're desperate, the choices they make when the law feels cold, and the risks they take when love becomes the only thing worth fighting for. So dim the lights, get comfortable, because tonight's story is about a woman whose dream of motherhood collided with a man who thought he had everything, until fate gave him something he never knew he needed. Now, let's go back to where it all began. 6 years before her life changed forever, Nadia Danieli stood on her grandmother's porch in Amarapura, watching the sunset paint the sky gold. The small coastal town had been her entire world for 22 years, with its narrow streets, fishermen's cottages, and the smell of salt that clung to everything. "America will eat you alive," her grandmother had warned, pressing a thin gold chain into Nadia's palm. "New York isn't for soft hearts like yours." But Nadia's mind was made up. Her acceptance letter to Columbia's library science program, her ticket out, was already tucked into her suitcase. "I'll come back," she promised, though they both knew it might not be true. "After I've built something of my own." That night, she dreamed of towering buildings and bustling streets, of becoming someone beyond the fisherman's daughter who read too many books. She imagined her future children, always children, plural in her dreams, running through Central Park speaking perfect English without her accent. Her father drove her to the airport at dawn, his calloused hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. They barely spoke. Words had never been their strength, not since her mother died when Nadia was 12. Their love existed in silence, in the lunches he packed for her school, in the bookshelves he built for her growing collection, in the way he taught her to bait a hook and gut a fish, when other fathers in Amarapura only taught such things to sons. "You'll call," he said at the terminal. "Not a question." Every Sunday, Nadia promised. He nodded once, pressed $400 into her hand, money she knew he couldn't spare, and watched her walk away. New York City greeted Nadia with indifference. Her tiny apartment in Washington Heights had a window that faced a brick wall and a shower that ran cold after 3 minutes. But she didn't care. She was free, untethered, alive with possibility. Columbia consumed her days. A barista job claimed her nights. She learned to navigate the subway, to walk with purpose even when lost, to identify genuine kindness amid the city's rougher edges. Professors praised her papers on early childhood literacy, and the coffee shop promoted her to shift manager after 6 months. Yet something hollow lived in her chest, an emptiness that grew each time she video-called her father and saw how the house in Amarapura remained unchanged, waiting for her return. By 28, Nadia had built the life she'd dreamed of, at least on paper. Master's degree completed, full-time position at the New York Public Library's children's section, a slightly larger apartment with actual sunlight, friends who dragged her to wine bars on Friday nights, even a series of boyfriends who were perfectly nice until they weren't. But motherhood, the dream that had followed her from Amarapura, remained elusive. "You have time," her friends insisted over brunch. "Focus on your career. Travel, live a little." Nadia smiled and nodded, never telling them how her heart ached each time a toddler climbed onto her lap during story hour, how she collected baby name books like precious gems, how she sometimes pressed a hand to her flat stomach and whispered promises to the children who didn't yet exist. When Davis, her boyfriend of nearly 2 years, left abruptly for a job in Seattle, Nadia realized she'd been waiting for something that might never arrive, the perfect partner, the perfect timing, the perfect life. "I don't need to wait anymore," she told her reflection one morning, fist clenched around her grandmother's gold chain. "I can do this myself." The decision to pursue IVF as a single woman wasn't impulsive. Nadia researched for months, cutting expenses, working extra shifts, cataloging books, saving every penny. She interviewed 3 fertility clinics before choosing reproductive specialists of Manhattan, more expensive than the others, but with higher success rates, and a doctor who didn't flinch when Nadia said she was single by choice. "Many women choose this path," Dr. Haley had assured her, reviewing Nadia's blood work results. "Your numbers look excellent. Young, healthy eggs. No reason this shouldn't work first try." Nadia spent weeks reviewing donor profiles, searching for glimpses of her father in these anonymous men. She eventually selected donor 5479, brown eyes, university-educated, musical, with a family history free of concerning medical conditions. The profile mentioned a dimpled smile and a love of classic literature, details that made Nadia's heart skip. Choosing him felt strangely intimate, as if they were creating something together despite never meeting. She wondered if he ever thought about the children he might have in the world, these strangers carrying half his genetic code. The morning of her procedure, Nadia woke before dawn. She showered methodically, pulled on the loose cotton dress she'd bought specifically for this day, and touched the small photo of her mother she kept beside her bed. "I might become a mother today," she whispered to the fading image. "I wish you were here to see it." The clinic's waiting room was eerily quiet when she arrived, just past 7. A receptionist with tired eyes handed her a clipboard of forms and directed her to a dressing room where she exchanged her clothes for a paper gown that crinkled when she moved. Dr. Haley arrived with a warm smile, her dark hair pulled into a neat bun. "Big day, Nadia. How are you feeling?" "Nervous," Nadia admitted. "Excited, terrified. Is that normal?" "Completely normal," Dr. Haley assured her, reviewing the chart. "We'll transfer 2 embryos today, which gives us excellent odds. With your age and health, there's a good chance both will take." "Twins?" Nadia breathed, the possibility both thrilling and overwhelming. "It's a possibility," Dr. Haley nodded. "Are you prepared for that?" Nadia thought of her quiet apartment, her single income, the absence of a partner to share midnight feedings and first steps. Then she thought of 2 tiny hands in hers, siblings who would never know the loneliness she'd felt growing up. "Yes," she said firmly. "I'm ready for whatever comes." The procedure room was cold and clinical, dominated by equipment that looked more appropriate for a space mission than creating life. Nadia lay back on the exam table, feet in stirrups, trying to steady her breathing as Dr. Haley explained each step. "The embryos were thawed this morning and are developing beautifully," she said, preparing the instruments. "You'll feel some pressure, maybe slight cramping, but it shouldn't be painful." Nadia nodded, focusing on the ceiling tiles as a nurse patted her hand. "Just a little pinch," Dr. Haley warned. Nadia closed her eyes, silently reciting the names she'd chosen years ago, Alexander for a boy, Natalie for a girl. She imagined tiny fingers and toes, first words, first steps. She imagined becoming the mother she'd lost too young. "All done," Dr. Haley announced, her voice pulling Nadia back to the present. 2 healthy embryos, right where they belong. The nurse helped Nadia sit up, explaining she should rest for 30 minutes before leaving. "When will I know?" Nadia asked, one hand instinctively covering her stomach. "Blood test in 12 days, Dr. Haley said. Though many women test at home before then." Nadia nodded, already calculating the date in her head. 12 days. Less than 2 weeks until she might know if she'd become a mother. Dr. Haley squeezed her shoulder. "Try to relax. Stress doesn't help implantation." As if on cue, the nurse's pager beeped. She glanced at it, frowned, and whispered something to Dr. Haley. "I need to check something," Dr. Haley said, her expression suddenly professional. "Nurse Chen will help you to the recovery area." "I'll stop by before you leave." Nadia watched them hurry out, an uneasy feeling settling in her chest. She told herself it was nothing, some other patient, some administrative issue, nothing to do with her embryos, her potential babies, her future. 3 weeks later, Nadia sat in Dr. Haley's office, clutching the positive pregnancy test she'd taken that morning. "Congratulations," Dr. Haley said, smiling as she handed Nadia the blood test results. "You're officially pregnant, and based on your HCG levels, I'd say both embryos implanted successfully." "Twins," Nadia whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I'm really having twins? We'll confirm with an ultrasound in a few weeks, but yes, it looks that way." Joy surged through Nadia's body, pure, untainted happiness unlike anything she'd felt before. Then she noticed Dr. Haley's expression, professional smile firmly in place, but something tight around her eyes. "What is it?" Nadia asked, her hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. "Is something wrong with the babies?" No, Dr. Haley assured her quickly. "The pregnancy appears completely healthy." "Then what?" Dr. Haley sighed, removing her glasses. Nadia, we've discovered a complication. Not with your pregnancy, but with the process. What kind of complication? Cold fear replaced the warmth of joy. We performed routine genetic verification, matching the embryo's DNA with the donor profile, Dr. Haley explained carefully. The embryos implanted in You Don't Match donor 5479. The room seemed to tilt. I don't understand. There was a mix-up in our lab, Dr. Haley said, her voice now clinical. The embryos you're carrying were created using eggs from another patient who had consented to embryo donation and, well, sperm from another source. Another source? Nadia repeated, feeling dizzy. Whose? Dr. Haley slid a folder across the desk. The biological father of your babies is Sebastian Archer. The name hung in the air between them. Sebastian Archer. Even Nadia, who barely skimmed the business section of the newspaper, recognized that name. The billionaire CEO of Archer Pharmaceuticals. The man whose face appeared on magazine covers next to words like ruthless and genius. That's impossible, Nadia whispered. Why would Sebastian Archer's material even be at your clinic? Mr. Archer and his late fiancée were patients several years ago, Dr. Haley explained. They created embryos before she began cancer treatment. After her passing, he chose to preserve them rather than destroy them. Nadia couldn't breathe. The babies growing inside her, her twins, her miracle, carried the DNA of a man she'd never met, a powerful man, a wealthy man, a man who would undoubtedly want to know about them. Does he know? She asked, her voice barely audible. We contacted him this morning, Dr. Haley confirmed. Our legal team advised immediate disclosure to both parties. Before Nadia could process this information, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Miss Daniele, this is Sebastian Archer. We need to discuss the situation involving my embryos. Car waiting outside the clinic. Sir. Across town, Sebastian Archer's morning had begun like any other. 5:30 a.m. workout in his penthouse gym, protein shake prepared by his personal chef, shower in his marble bathroom with its view of Central Park, custom suit laid out by his valet. By 7, he'd already reviewed overnight reports from Asian markets and dictated responses to his executive team. By 8, he'd conducted 3 international calls while his driver navigated morning traffic toward Archer Tower. Sebastian thrived on order, on precision, on control. Every aspect of his life operated with the efficiency of the pharmaceutical empire he'd built. No wasted motions, no unnecessary variables, until his lawyer called at 8:17 a.m. What do you mean my embryos were implanted in another woman? Sebastian demanded, gripping his phone so tightly the screen might crack. That's impossible. Those embryos were preserved for research purposes only. His lawyer's voice remained calm. According to Dr. Haley, there was a mix-up in their lab. Your embryos, the ones created with Elise before her treatment, were mistakenly implanted in a woman named Nadia Daniele 3 weeks ago. She's pregnant. With twins, Sebastian's world tilted on its axis. The embryos he'd created with Elise, the children they'd planned to have someday, after her recovery, after their wedding, after the future they'd mapped out together. The future that died with her 2 years ago. And now a stranger carried those children. Who is she? He asked, his voice deadly quiet. Librarian, single, chose anonymous donor conception, no criminal record, excellent credit score, masters in library science. Our team is gathering more information. I want to meet her. Today, Sebastian, let the legal team handle this. We can arrange. Today, Sebastian repeated, ending the call. He instructed his driver to reroute to the clinic, his mind racing through scenarios, calculations, contingencies. The children were his, biologically, legally, morally. He would need to establish custody, create trusts, adjust his will. He would need to determine this woman's character, her intentions, her price. But beneath the cool logic and strategic planning, something else stirred, something Sebastian hadn't allowed himself to feel since Elise's death: hope. The children he'd thought lost forever now existed, were growing, developing, alive. His children. He was still processing this revelation when his car pulled up outside the clinic, just as a woman emerged. Petite, dark-haired, simply dressed, looking shell-shocked. Nadia Danieli, the woman carrying his babies. Sebastian stepped out of the car, straightening his tie. Miss Danieli, she turned, recognizing him instantly. Everyone did. Her hand moving instinctively to her stomach in a protective gesture that made something twist in Sebastian's chest. "Mr. Archer," she replied, her voice steadier than he'd expected. They stared at each other, these strangers connected by the most intimate bond imaginable. The future parents of 2 children neither had planned for. "We should talk," Sebastian said finally. "Yes," Nadia. She didn't move toward his waiting car, instead pointing to a small cafe across the street. "There. Public place. 20 minutes. Sebastian wasn't accustomed to having his suggestions countered, but he nodded curtly. 20 minutes. As Nadia walked away, spine straight despite the weight of the morning's revelations, Sebastian realized this situation would not be resolved with money or power or legal maneuvering. This woman, this librarian from nowhere, carried his children, Elise's children, and the look in her eyes told him she wouldn't give them up without a fight he was equally prepared to wage. What would you do in Nadia's shoes, finding yourself unexpectedly carrying a billionaire's twins, or in Sebastian's position, discovering your genetic children growing inside a stranger? Comment below with your thoughts. This story is just beginning, and the battle for these unborn twins will test both Nadia and Sebastian in ways neither could have imagined. Sebastian Archer strode into Archer Tower, bypassing the security checkpoint with a curt nod. The employees who typically rushed to greet him stepped back, sensing the storm clouds gathering around their CEO. His meeting with Nadia Danieli at the cafe had not gone as expected. He'd anticipated fear, or perhaps negotiation for financial compensation. Instead, he'd encountered quiet defiance. The librarian had sipped her tea, met his gaze directly, and calmly informed him that while she understood his shock, she had no intention of surrendering the babies growing inside her. "They're as much mine as yours now," she'd stated, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "I didn't ask for this situation either, Mr. Archer, but I'm preparing to be their mother." In his corner office overlooking Manhattan, Sebastian loosened his tie with unusual aggression. His executive assistant hovered in the doorway, clutching a stack of documents requiring his signature. "Not now, Miranda," he snapped, turning to the windows. "Sir, the board is requesting an emergency meeting regarding the situation tomorrow, not before." When the door closed, Sebastian pressed his forehead against the cool glass. For a man who commanded a pharmaceutical empire worth billions, who negotiated deals that altered global markets, who never betrayed emotion during the most high-stakes confrontations, this loss of control felt like drowning. His mind drifted to Elise, as it often did in moments of crisis. She would have known how to navigate this chaos with grace. Elise Morgan, brilliant research scientist, compassionate soul, the woman who'd agreed to become his wife 5 years ago. Their meeting had been coincidence, a charity gala where she'd boldly challenged his company's pricing structure for a life-saving drug. Her intelligence and courage had captivated him immediately. Their love story unfolded with surprising speed. Within a year, they'd moved into his penthouse. Within 2, they'd begun planning their future family. Elise had insisted on creating embryos before their wedding, a precaution she'd called insurance against life's uncertainties. How prophetic those words proved when the diagnosis came. Ovarian cancer, aggressive and advanced. The embryos became their hope for the future, something to fight for beyond survival. "We'll use them someday," Elise had promised from her hospital bed, pale but determined. "When I'm better, when we're ready." But she never got better. The treatments failed, one after another. Sebastian had moved mountains, bought experimental drugs, hired the world's top specialists, even acquired a small biotech firm developing promising therapies. None of it mattered. Elise slipped away on a Tuesday morning while he dozed in the chair beside her hospital bed. The memory of those final days, the hospice nurses with their gentle voices, the morphine drip that finally eased her pain, the deafening silence after her last breath, still haunted him 2 years later. "I failed you," he whispered to her memory, watching the city lights begin to glow as dusk settled. "But I won't fail our children." His intercom buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. "Mr. Archer, Charles Wilson is on line 1. Sebastian composed himself before answering. "Charles, we've reviewed our options," his chief counsel began without preamble. "Given the circumstances, we recommend filing for partial custody immediately, with provisions for full custody pending psychiatric and home evaluations of Ms. Danieli." "And our chances?" A pause. "Mixed. The courts typically favor biological mothers, but this case has unprecedented elements. Your resources, stability, and genetic connection give us strong arguments." Sebastian considered this assessment. What about her, Miss Danieli? What would this do to her? The question surprised them both. Charles recovered quickly. She would likely face significant legal expenses, multiple evaluations, character witnesses. The process would be challenging for someone of her means. The implication was clear. Sebastian could simply overwhelm her with legal machinery until she surrendered, a strategy he'd employed countless times in business. Proceed with the filing, Sebastian decided, but no unnecessary hardship. This isn't a hostile takeover, Charles. These are my children. 3 days later, Sebastian sat in Manhattan family court, watching Nadia enter with a single attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in a practical suit who carried a weathered briefcase. Nadia wore a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, no makeup masking the shadows beneath her eyes. Their gazes met briefly before she looked away. Judge Eleanor Winters, a veteran of family court known for her no-nonsense approach, reviewed the case file with evident exasperation. "Let me understand this correctly," she began, glancing between the parties. "Reproductive specialists of Manhattan implanted embryos created by Mr. Archer and his late fiancée into Miss Danieli without proper consent from either party. Miss Danieli is now pregnant with twins, and rather than pursuing damages against the clinic jointly, you're battling each other for custody of children not yet born?" Sebastian's legal team shifted uncomfortably. Nadia's attorney leaned forward. "Your Honor, my client entered the clinic as a single woman pursuing motherhood. While the genetic material involved has changed due to the clinic's error, her intention remains unchanged. She is prepared to be a mother to these children." Charles Wilson rose smoothly. Your Honor, Mr. Archer has a biological connection to these children. They were created with his late fiancée before her passing, with the intention that they would be their family. He has the resources, stability, and commitment to provide these children with every advantage. Judge Winters held up her hand. I'm familiar with the arguments both sides will make. What concerns me is the welfare of two unborn children whose parents are already engaging in adversarial litigation. She fixed both parties with a stern gaze. These children will share genetic material with Mr. Archer. They will be carried and delivered by Miss Daniele. Biology makes them connected to both of you, regardless of how this court rules eventually. She closed the file decisively. I'm ordering DNA testing after birth to confirm paternity, though I don't anticipate surprises given the clinic's admission of error. Until then, I want both parties to attempt mediation. Miss Daniele will provide Mr. Archer with updates regarding her prenatal care and the baby's development. Mr. Archer will respect Miss Daniele's privacy and well-being during her pregnancy. As they exited the courtroom, the hallway erupted with activity. Journalists pressed forward, cameras flashed, questions overlapped in a cacophony of sensationalism. Mr. Archer, is it true you're fighting for custody of twins conceived through an IVF mix-up? Miss Daniele, how does it feel to be carrying a billionaire's babies? Sebastian's security team formed a protective barrier, whisking him toward his waiting car. He glanced back to see Nadia, overwhelmed by the press, looking small and vulnerable as microphones crowded her face. Without thinking, Sebastian broke from his security detail, pushing back through the throng. He reached Nadia, placing a firm hand on her lower back. Miss Daniele is not taking questions, he announced, his voice carrying the authority that commanded boardrooms. Any outlets publishing invasive stories about the mother of my children will find themselves facing substantial legal consequences. He guided her toward his car, instructing his driver to take them away from the chaos. Nadia sat stiffly beside him, still processing his intervention. Thank you, she said finally, but I don't need your protection. Clearly you do, Sebastian countered, checking his phone as messages flooded in. The media will devour you. They'll dig through your past, camp outside your apartment, harass your co-workers. I've dealt with press scrutiny my entire adult life. You haven't. Nadia gazed out the window, one hand unconsciously resting on her stomach. I never wanted this attention. None of us wanted this situation, Sebastian replied, more gently than he intended. But here we are. When the car reached her building, a walk-up in Astoria that made Sebastian wince, he made a decision that would alter both their futures. Move in with me, he said abruptly. Nadia turned, certain she'd misheard. Excuse me? Not permanently, Sebastian clarified. Just until the babies are born. I have a guest house on my Connecticut property. Complete privacy, full security away from the media circus. You could continue working remotely. The judge would view it favorably, parents attempting cooperation. Live with you? Nadia repeated incredulously. The man trying to take my babies? Our babies, Sebastian corrected, and yes, it's the logical solution to several problems. Nadia's laugh held no humor. Logical? There's nothing logical about any of this. Sebastian watched emotions play across her expressive face. Anger, frustration, and beneath it all, fear. Fear that perhaps matched his own, though he'd never admit it. Consider it, Miss Daniele, for their sake, if not your own. That night, alone in his penthouse, Sebastian received an unexpected visitor. His personal assistant appeared at his office door, expression grave. Sir, there's someone insisting on seeing you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's about Elise Morgan's embryos. A Jonas Renner? Sebastian froze, the name triggering memories he'd locked away. Jonas Renner, Elise's younger brother, once Sebastian's friend. Their relationship had fractured after Elise's death, Jonas's grief transforming into bitter accusations that Sebastian had prioritized work over Elise's care. "Send him in," Sebastian directed, steeling himself. Jonas entered like a storm, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, wearing a rumpled suit that suggested he'd slept in his car. At 35, he looked a decade older than when Sebastian had last seen him. "You son of a bitch," Jonas began, voice low and dangerous. "I had to hear about Elise's babies from the goddamn news?" Sebastian remained seated, outwardly calm despite the tension coiling within him. "Jonas, I only learned about this situation 4 days ago. I haven't had time to contact family." "Family," Jonas spat the word. "You stopped being family the moment you let my sister die." "That's enough," Sebastian warned, rising slowly. "Elise fought harder than anyone I've ever known. Every possible treatment." "While you were closing deals in Tokyo," Jonas shouted, slamming his palm on Sebastian's desk. "She needed you there, not your money, not your doctors." The accusation struck its target. Sebastian had been in Japan finalizing an acquisition when Elise's condition deteriorated rapidly. He'd chartered a private jet immediately, but arrived hours after she lost consciousness for the final time. "I loved your sister," Sebastian said quietly. "These children are part of her legacy." Jonas laughed bitterly. "And now you want to raise them with some random woman?" Elise would be disgusted. "Miss Daniele had no part in this error," Sebastian replied, his patience wearing thin. "She's an innocent party, just as I am." "Innocent?" Jonas shook his head. "No one at your level is innocent, Sebastian. I know what really happened at that clinic." Before Sebastian could respond, security arrived to escort Jonas out. As they led him away, Jonas called back, "This isn't over. Those babies are Elise's legacy, not yours to claim." The encounter left Sebastian uneasy. Jonas had struggled after Elise's death. Drinking problems, job losses, even a brief hospitalization for what the family called exhaustion. But tonight he seemed different, focused in his anger, convinced of conspiracy rather than accident. Sebastian made a mental note to increase security protocols and investigate Jonas's recent activities. Whatever their past friendship, Jonas's instability now posed a potential threat. The next morning brought news that solidified Sebastian's resolve. The tabloids featured grainy photos of Nadia entering her apartment building, headlines screaming speculation about the billion-dollar babies growing inside her. One particularly vicious article questioned her motives, suggesting she might have engineered the mix-up for financial gain. Sebastian immediately dispatched his team to manage the PR crisis, issuing cease and desist letters to the most egregious offenders. He then called Nadia directly. "Have you seen the papers?" he asked when she answered. "My superintendent slipped them under my door," she replied, her voice tight with strain. "Apparently I'm both a gold digger and a victim, depending which page you read." "This will only escalate," Sebastian warned. "My offer stands. The guest house is ready whenever you decide." The line went silent for so long he thought she'd hung up. "I can't just abandon my life," she said finally. "My job, my friends." "Your job can be done remotely for now. Your library director already agreed when my assistant called. As for friends, they can visit the estate after security clearance." Another long pause. "You've been planning this," Nadia accused. "You assumed I'd have no choice." "I prepared for contingencies," Sebastian corrected. "It's what I do." 3 days later, Sebastian received word from his estate manager that Nadia had agreed to his arrangement. She would arrive the following morning with a single suitcase, requesting minimal interaction and maximum privacy. Sebastian instructed his staff accordingly, then spent hours personally inspecting the guest house, though he rarely used the Connecticut estate, preferring his Manhattan penthouse for its convenience. He found himself oddly invested in ensuring the space met Nadia's needs. He added several touches beyond the standard preparations. Bookshelves filled with literature ranging from classics to contemporary fiction, a subscription to her favorite cooking magazine, a small herb garden planted outside the kitchen window. Most significantly, he authorized the conversion of one bedroom into a nursery, not fully furnished, as he recognized Nadia would want input, but prepared with 2 identical cribs, a rocking chair, and built-in bookshelves already filled with children's classics. The morning of Nadia's arrival, Sebastian waited in his study, watching through the window as his driver brought her to the guest house. She emerged from the car looking smaller than he remembered, her face pale with exhaustion. The media siege had clearly taken its toll. He gave her an hour to settle before walking the path to her door. When she answered his knock, Nadia had changed into comfortable clothes, her hair loose around her shoulders. "The house is beautiful," she acknowledged, stepping aside to let him enter. "Thank you." Sebastian nodded, suddenly awkward in this domestic setting. Business negotiations, corporate takeovers, these he navigated with ease. Small talk with a woman carrying his children felt foreign territory. "The staff will respect your privacy," he explained, standing stiffly in the living room. "The kitchen is stocked, but the main house serves meals if you prefer. The office upstairs has secure internet for your work needs." Nadia nodded, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. "Have you seen the nursery?" Sebastian asked after an uncomfortable silence. Something flickered across Nadia's face. Surprise, perhaps wariness. "Not yet. It's not finished," he added quickly. "I thought we might decide together about colors, themes, the we hung between them. Not quite a peace offering, not quite a concession, but something new nonetheless. An acknowledgement that whatever their differences, whatever battle awaited them, they were irrevocably linked by the lives growing inside her." Sebastian led her upstairs, watching as she entered the nursery. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the white cribs and empty walls awaiting decisions not yet made. The unexpected thoughtfulness of this gesture, this acknowledgement of her role, her importance, caused something to crack inside Nadia. The tears she'd been fighting for days finally spilled over. Sebastian stiffened, clearly uncomfortable with this display of emotion. "Is something wrong with the room?" "No," Nadia managed, wiping her cheeks. "It's perfect. It's just, this is real now, isn't it? We're really having twins." Sebastian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Yes, we are." Later that evening, after returning to the main house, Sebastian stood at his study window, watching lights glow in the guest house windows. Nadia was there, carrying his children, sleeping under his protection, yet fundamentally separate. He thought of Elise, of promises made, of futures lost and found again in unexpected ways. He thought of Jonas's accusations and the shadows they cast. Mostly, he thought of the nursery, 2 cribs, 2 lives, 2 strangers connected by circumstances neither had chosen. For a man who orchestrated corporate empires with precision, this new reality remained stubbornly beyond his control. Yet, as the guest house lights dimmed one by one, Sebastian acknowledged a truth he'd been avoiding. These children, and by extension Nadia Danieli, had already changed him irrevocably. The battle for custody remained ahead. The complications of their arrangement loomed large. But tonight, Sebastian allowed himself to feel something he'd thought forever lost after Elise's death: hope. Do you think Nadia should trust Sebastian's motives, or is he simply trying to control the situation as he does everything else in his life? Hit that like button if you believe these two strangers might actually find common ground for the sake of their unexpected twins. The first morning in the guest house, Nadia woke to the sound of someone in her kitchen. Heart racing, she grabbed her phone to call security before remembering where she was. Sebastian Archer's estate, supposedly safe from intrusion. Creeping down the stairs in her pajamas, she found Sebastian himself standing at her stove, spatula in hand, a look of intense concentration on his face as he attempted to flip a pancake. The kitchen counter displayed evidence of previous failed attempts, misshapen, half-burned casualties of his efforts. "What are you doing?" Nadia asked, causing him to startle. The pancake he'd been focused on landed partly on the pan's edge, folding in on itself. Sebastian straightened, as if caught in corporate espionage rather than breakfast preparation. "Good morning. I thought you might be hungry." Nadia blinked at the clock, 6:15 a.m. "Do you always cook breakfast before dawn?" "I don't usually cook at all," he admitted, scraping the ruined pancake onto a growing stack of rejects. "But pregnancy requires proper nutrition. My nutritionist provided recipes." The absurdity of a billionaire CEO destroying her kitchen before sunrise struck Nadia suddenly. A laugh bubbled up, her first genuine laugh since this ordeal began. "What?" Sebastian asked, looking almost offended. "Nothing," Nadia managed, moving to take the spatula from him. "Just wondering if your shareholders know you can't flip a pancake." Something shifted in Sebastian's expression, a flicker of self-deprecation rarely displayed in public. "Cooking wasn't covered in business school," he replied dryly. This unexpected moment of normalcy set the tone for their first week of cohabitation, a comedy of errors as two strangers with nothing in common, except the babies connecting them, attempted to navigate their new reality. Day 2 brought the great laundry incident, when Sebastian discovered Nadia hanging clothes on a makeshift line in the backyard, despite the perfectly functional dryer inside. "Why would you do this manually?" he asked, genuinely perplexed. "Sunlight disinfects naturally," Nadia explained, pinning a blouse to the line. "And it saves electricity." Sebastian, whose personal carbon footprint from private jets alone could power a small nation, looked momentarily chastened. "I'll have solar panels installed next week," he decided, as if that settled the matter. Nadia just shook her head, hiding a smile. By day 3, they'd established an uneasy rhythm. Sebastian worked from his home office in the main house, but appeared at the guest house at precisely 7:30 a.m., 12:30 p.m., and 7 p.m. to check on the situation, as he phrased it. Nadia conducted virtual storytime sessions for her library from the sunny upstairs office, children's books propped against a laptop as toddlers waved through the screen. Sebastian inadvertently walked into one such session, freezing when 20 preschoolers suddenly shouted greetings at the strange man who'd appeared behind Miss Nadia. "Children, this is a friend who's helping me while the babies grow," Nadia improvised. "Are you the daddy?" A particularly bold 4-year-old demanded. Sebastian, who had faced down boardrooms of hostile investors without blinking, stood speechless before this tiny inquisitor. "Yes," Nadia answered after an awkward pause. "He is." The simple acknowledgement hung between them long after the session ended. Neither mentioned it, but something had shifted, a public declaration of their connection, however complicated. On day 4, Nadia experienced her first bout of serious morning sickness. Sebastian arrived for his morning check to find her pale and shaking in the bathroom doorway. "Call an ambulance," he commanded immediately, phone already in hand. Sebastian lowered his phone slightly. "Are you certain? Should we consult a physician? I can have a specialist here within the hour." "What I need," Nadia said carefully, "is crackers, ginger ale, and no one hovering while I throw up." Later that afternoon, she emerged from her bedroom to find a care package outside her door. Crackers, ginger candies, peppermint tea, and a handwritten note from Sebastian. "Call if you need anything." Anything at all. The thoughtfulness of this gesture, so at odds with his corporate shark persona, touched something in Nadia she hadn't expected to feel: gratitude. Their fragile truce continued to evolve through small, unexpected moments. Sebastian noticed Nadia struggling to reach a high shelf and installed step stools throughout the house without comment. Nadia observed his preference for a particular Ethiopian coffee and ordered a supply, leaving it casually on the counter where he would find it. Neither acknowledged these small kindnesses directly. Both pretended the gestures meant nothing, even as they meant everything. By the end of the week, they faced their first significant challenge together: Nadia's 12-week prenatal appointment. The first ultrasound where they might see the twins clearly. The first time they would appear in public as a unit since moving to the estate. Sebastian arrived at the guest house that morning in a sleek black SUV, security team vigilant. Nadia emerged wearing a simple sundress, her hair pulled back, no makeup masking the shadows beneath her eyes, or the slight green tinge of persistent nausea. "You look unwell," Sebastian observed bluntly. "Thank you for that assessment," Nadia replied with equal bluntness. "Growing your children is exhausting." The drive to the private medical facility Sebastian had arranged passed in tense silence. Nadia stared out the window, one hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. Sebastian checked emails on his phone, his knee bouncing slightly, the only outward sign of his nervousness. Inside the clinic, a discreet establishment catering to celebrities and the ultra-wealthy, they were ushered immediately into a private suite. No waiting room, no forms to complete, no other patients to navigate. Just another reminder of the privilege that surrounded Sebastian like an invisible force field. Dr. Elena Chen entered with a warm smile that helped ease Nadia's tension. "Miss Daniele, Mr. Archer, I've reviewed your files from reproductive specialists. Today we'll do a comprehensive scan to check both babies' development." As Nadia lay back on the examination table, Sebastian hovered uncertainly by the door. "You can sit beside her," Dr. Chen suggested gently. "Many fathers like to hold hands during the ultrasound." Fathers. The word seemed to startle Sebastian as much as it did Nadia. After a moment's hesitation, he moved to the chair beside her, carefully placing his hand palm up on the edge of the table. An offer, not a demand. Nadia hesitated, then placed her fingers lightly on his. Connected, but barely. Dr. Chen applied the cold gel to Nadia's abdomen, and the room filled with a rapid whooshing sound. 2 distinct heartbeats, strong and synchronized. "There they are," Dr. Chen said, turning the screen so both parents could see. Twin A and Twin B. Both measuring right on schedule. Nadia stared in wonder at the grainy images. 2 distinct profiles, tiny hands, feet that seemed to be kicking already. Tears filled her eyes as the reality she'd been carrying inside her appeared in black and white. "They're perfect," she whispered. She felt Sebastian's hand tighten around hers and turned to find him transfixed, eyes locked on the screen, emotion cracking through his carefully maintained facade. "Can you tell the genders yet?" he asked, voice rough. "It's still a bit early," Dr. Chen replied. "But if you want to know, we might get a better view at 16 weeks. I'd like to know, Sebastian and Nadia said simultaneously, then glanced at each other in surprise. Dr. Chen smiled. I see the parents are in agreement on this. That's a good start. Parents. The word hung between them, a reality neither had fully accepted until this moment, seeing their baby's hearts beating together on the monitor. The appointment proceeded smoothly, with Dr. Chen pronouncing both twins healthy and developing normally. As they prepared to leave, she handed them each a printout of the ultrasound image. Many parents find these first pictures quite meaningful, she said, something tangible to connect with while waiting for the big day. Outside in the parking lot, Sebastian paused before opening Nadia's door. Would you, he began, then stopped, seeming to recalibrate. There's a cafe nearby that makes excellent ginger tea. It might help with the nausea, if you're feeling up to it. The invitation, awkward, hesitant, genuine, surprised Nadia. More surprising was her response. That sounds nice. The cafe proved as exclusive as the medical facility, a hidden gem where privacy was paramount. They were seated in a secluded corner, fresh flowers on the table, no other patrons nearby. Nadia wondered if Sebastian had called ahead to clear the space, then decided she didn't want to know. Their conversation started stilted, but gradually eased into something almost comfortable as they discussed the ultrasound, Dr. Chen's recommendations, and plans for the next appointment. Have you thought about names? Nadia asked suddenly. Sebastian looked startled by the question. Not specifically, no. Have you? Alexander for a boy, Nadia admitted. I've had that name picked out since I was 16. For a girl, she hesitated. I always liked Natalie. Sebastian considered this. Alexander is strong, classic. I would add William as a middle name, my grandfather's name. He paused. Natalie is lovely. Perhaps Natalie Rose. Rose was my mother's name, Nadia said softly. Sebastian nodded, understanding the significance. Then it settled. Alexander William and Natalie Rose. The simplicity of this agreement, their first real collaboration as parents, created a strange warmth between them. For a moment, they weren't adversaries or reluctant cohabitants, but simply two people discussing the children they would share. The moment broke when Sebastian's phone buzzed with an urgent message from his office. I need to take this, he apologized, stepping outside to the sidewalk. Through the window, Nadia watched him transform, shoulders squaring, jaw tightening, voice dropping to the commanding tone that had built his empire. The contrast between the almost gentle man discussing baby names and this corporate titan struck her forcefully. Which was the real Sebastian Archer? Perhaps both, perhaps neither. As she pondered this, a movement across the street caught her attention. A man stood partially hidden behind a newspaper stand, his face obscured but his posture alert, focused on Sebastian. Something about his stillness amid the flowing pedestrian traffic raised goosebumps on Nadia's arms. When Sebastian ended his call and turned back toward the cafe, the figure disappeared into the crowd with practiced ease. Nadia blinked, wondering if she'd imagined the entire thing, a paranoid reaction to her heightened hormones and the stress of their situation. She didn't mention it on the drive back to the estate, but the image lingered, that watchful figure, something predatory in his stillness. That evening, Nadia sat on her porch swing, wrapped in a light blanket against the spring chill, the ultrasound picture propped against her teacup. Two tiny profiles, two hearts, two futures entwined with hers irrevocably. Sebastian appeared at the garden path, hands in his pockets, hesitant in a way that still surprised her. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the space beside her. Nadia nodded, shifting to make room. They sat in companionable silence as twilight deepened around them, fireflies beginning to dance among the hedges. "My security team will be more visible tomorrow," Sebastian said eventually. "Standard procedure after public appearances." Nadia's thoughts returned to the watching figure. "I saw someone today," she admitted. "Outside the cafe, watching you." Sebastian turned sharply. "Describe them." I couldn't see his face clearly. Medium height, wearing a baseball cap and dark jacket. The way he stood, it felt deliberate, not casual. Sebastian's expression darkened. "Did he approach you when I stepped outside?" "No, he disappeared when you turned back toward the cafe." Sebastian nodded slowly, processing this information. "Probably paparazzi," he said, though something in his tone suggested he didn't believe this explanation. "I'll have security review the street cameras." The easy atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a tension Nadia couldn't quite identify. She shivered, pulling the blanket tighter. "Let's go inside," Sebastian suggested, rising. "The evening air isn't good for you or the babies." As they entered the guest house, Nadia noticed subtle changes that had accumulated throughout the week. Her books mingling with his business journals on the coffee table, her handmade Afghan thrown over his expensive leather briefcase, the refrigerator displaying both her library schedule and his meeting calendar. The space had transformed from a sterile guest house to something approaching a home. Not quite hers, not quite his, but somehow theirs. Sebastian noticed her surveying the room. "Is something wrong?" "No," Nadia said thoughtfully. "Just noticing how quickly we've settled in." He followed her gaze, seeming to register the domestic tableau for the first time, the evidence of two lives gradually, reluctantly intertwining. "It's temporary," he reminded her, though without the conviction he'd projected earlier in the week. "Of course," Nadia agreed. Neither mentioned that temporary had an expiration date, the twins' birth, now approximately 6 months away. Neither acknowledged that their custody battle remained theoretically active, despite the strange peace they'd established. Sebastian moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "About today," he began awkwardly. "Seeing them, hearing their heartbeats. Thank you for allowing me to be there." The formal gratitude felt oddly touching, a recognition that despite his legal rights, his wealth, his power, Nadia still controlled the most important access of all, the connection to their unborn children. "You're their father," she said simply. "You should be there." Something flashed across Sebastian's face, vulnerability perhaps, or gratitude too complex to express. He nodded once, then disappeared into the gathering darkness, leaving Nadia alone with her thoughts. Later that night, as Nadia prepared for bed, she noticed movement outside her window. A security guard making his rounds, flashlights sweeping the perimeter. The estate suddenly felt like both sanctuary and prison, protection and confinement inseparably linked. She placed the ultrasound picture on her nightstand, positioning it to catch the morning light. Whatever complications lay ahead, custody battles, media scrutiny, Sebastian's alternating warmth and distance, these babies remained the constant. Her children, his children, their future. As she drifted toward sleep, Nadia couldn't shake the image of that watching figure outside the cafe. Something about his stillness had suggested not just observation but calculation, not just interest but intent. In the main house, Sebastian sat in his darkened study, phone to his ear, voice low and urgent. "I need everything you can find on Jonas Renner's whereabouts for the past month," he instructed his head of security. "Credit card transactions, phone records, surveillance. He made threats regarding the twins, and I have reason to believe he may be escalating. The response on the other end was immediate and affirmative. Sebastian ended the call, turning to stare out at the guest house where Nadia slept, unknowingly at the center of a storm whose full force had yet to manifest. Their first week as reluctant housemates had established an uneasy alliance. Moments of connection, seeing their babies together, agreeing on names, sharing meals, had begun to erode the walls between them. But darker currents flowed beneath this fragile peace, currents neither fully understood nor could control. Sebastian poured himself a rare glass of scotch, contemplating the days ahead. Protecting Nadia and the twins had become his priority, not just from media intrusion or the stress of their situation, but from specific threats he hadn't yet shared with her. Threats bearing the face of a man who once called him brother. In the quiet of the Connecticut night, surrounded by security systems and armed guards, Sebastian made a silent promise to the 3 lives now under his protection no harm would come to them. Not while he had breath in his body and resources at his command. The battle lines had shifted. No longer did Sebastian Archer fight against Nadia Danieli for custody of unborn twins. Now they stood, however reluctantly, on the same side, unlikely allies against forces gathering in the shadows. What dangers await Nadia and Sebastian as their unusual living arrangement continues? Will the mysterious watcher make himself known? And can 2 strangers truly become a family when threats lurk just beyond their sanctuary? By the 3rd week at the Connecticut estate, a rhythm emerged between Nadia and Sebastian that neither had anticipated. What began as careful avoidance evolved into a choreographed dance of shared spaces and routines, 2 people learning each other's patterns with surprising ease. Sebastian rose at precisely 5 a.m., regardless of the day. His morning ritual remained unchanged, 60 minutes in his home gym, a protein shake prepared by his chef, shower, and immaculate suit, selected from dozens of identical options. By 7 a.m., he sat at his desk reviewing overnight reports from Asian markets. Nadia, by contrast, woke with the sun. She spent her first waking moments talking to the twins, one hand resting on her growing belly as she described the day ahead in soft whispers. Her prenatal yoga session in the garden often coincided with Sebastian's walk to his home office, creating a silent greeting ritual as they passed. His slight nod, her small smile, an acknowledgement without words. Their paths crossed again mid-morning when Sebastian brought coffee to the guest house, decaf for her, espresso for him, and they reviewed their schedules. These brief meetings, initially stiff and formal, gradually relaxed into comfortable exchanges. The library director asked if I'd develop a virtual program for expectant parents, Nadia mentioned one morning, accepting the porcelain cup he offered. Reading to babies in utero supposedly boosts language development. Sebastian considered this. You should use the media room in the main house, better acoustics, professional recording equipment. That's actually a good idea, Nadia admitted, surprised by his practical support. These small intersections multiplied as April turned to May. Sebastian adjusted his conference calls to avoid disrupting Nadia's virtual storytime sessions. Nadia learned to recognize the subtle signs of his stressful days, tightness around his eyes, the loosened tie, and gave him space accordingly. One evening, Sebastian returned from Manhattan later than usual, his expression dark with corporate warfare. He found Nadia in the kitchen of the main house, surrounded by unfamiliar ingredients, the air heavy with spices. "What's happening here?" he asked, setting down his briefcase. Nadia looked up from a pot she was stirring. "Dinner. You mentioned you'd be missing your chef tonight, and I thought—" She trailed off, suddenly uncertain. "I'm making fish curry. It's an Amarapuran recipe. Sebastian approached cautiously, peering into the fragrant pot. I didn't know you cooked. Everyone cooks in Amarapura, Nadia explained, adding fresh curry leaves to the mixture. Food is how we show care. My father taught me this recipe when I was 9. Something in Sebastian's expression shifted, curiosity replacing exhaustion. What's Amarapura like? You rarely mention it. Nadia smiled, memories softening her features. It's small, a fishing village that grew into a coastal town. Most families have lived there for generations. The morning fish market is the center of everything. Business, gossip, marriages arranged and broken. And your family? My father has a small boat, nothing fancy, but it kept us fed. My mother died when I was 12, breast cancer. After that, it was just us, plus my grandmother who lived with us until she passed. Sebastian absorbed this glimpse into her world, so different from his privileged upbringing of prep schools and inherited wealth. Here, Nadia said, offering a spoonful of curry sauce. Taste. The gesture, casual yet intimate, momentarily startled him. Sebastian hesitantly accepted, eyes widening as flavors exploded on his tongue, complex heat balanced with coconut sweetness. That's extraordinary, he admitted. It needs more turmeric, Nadia decided, reaching for a small jar. In Amarapura, we believe turmeric strengthens babies in the womb. My grandmother used to make me promise I'd eat it daily when I became pregnant. Sebastian watched her confident movements around his kitchen, realizing how little he knew about the woman carrying his children. What other traditions does your culture have for pregnancy? Nadia glanced up, surprised by his genuine interest. Many, some practical, some less so. We tie red threads around the wrist to ward off negative energy. We avoid sewing during pregnancy. Supposedly it tangles the umbilical cord. My father would probably insist on burying the placenta beneath a fruit tree after birth, instead of the dismissive reaction she half expected. Sebastian nodded thoughtfully. Different cultures approach childbirth through different lenses. The science is universal, but the human experience varies widely. This small acknowledgement, his respect for her heritage rather than automatic dismissal, marked another subtle shift between them. Would you like to help? Nadia offered, gesturing to vegetables waiting to be chopped. Sebastian glanced at his perfectly tailored suit, then at the knife she held out. After a moment's hesitation, he removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves with methodical precision, and accepted the knife. I should warn you, he said, examining a bell pepper with the same concentration he might give a financial report. My culinary skills are limited to protein shakes and coffee. Nadia smiled. Just cut everything the same size so it cooks evenly. I'll handle the complicated parts. They worked side by side, Sebastian following her instructions with unexpected humility. His knife skills improved under her guidance, his corporate precision transferring to the task at hand. They spoke little, but the silence felt companionable rather than strained. Later, seated at the kitchen island rather than the formal dining room, they shared the meal Sebastian had helped prepare. He watched Nadia's reaction as she tasted the curry. It's not quite right, she said critically. The coconut milk here is different, and I couldn't find proper Amarapuran chilies. It's delicious, Sebastian contradicted, serving himself a second portion. Better than most restaurants I've visited globally. Nadia laughed softly. You're just hungry. I'm discerning, he corrected. My business requires entertaining clients worldwide. I recognize exceptional cuisine. The compliment brought a flush to Nadia's cheeks that she attributed to pregnancy hormones rather than pleasure at his approval. As they finished eating, Nadia suddenly gasped, one hand flying to her stomach. Sebastian froze, alarm crossing his features. "What's wrong? Should I call Dr. Chen?" No, Nadia assured him quickly. "It's just, I felt something, like a flutter." Her expression softened with wonder. "I think it was a kick." Sebastian set down his fork carefully, eyes fixed on her midsection. "You can feel them moving already?" "It's early, but twins often make their presence known sooner." She hesitated, then added, "Would you like to feel?" The question hung between them, an offering more intimate than shared meals or morning coffees. Sebastian remained still, uncertainty evident in his usually confident demeanor. "They probably won't do it again right away." Nadia backtracked, mistaking his hesitation for reluctance. "Maybe another time." "I'd like to," Sebastian interrupted quietly, "if you're comfortable." Nadia nodded, guiding his hand to the spot where she'd felt movement. His palm rested lightly against her, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. They waited, neither speaking, barely breathing. Nothing happened. "Sometimes they're stubborn," Nadia said apologetically, "just like their father." Sebastian's lips curved slightly at this teasing observation, another first between them. He started to withdraw his hand when a distinct flutter pressed against his palm. His eyes widened, meeting Nadia's with rare, unguarded emotion. "Was that—" "Yes," she confirmed, her own smile radiant. "That was definitely a kick. Probably Alexander. He seems more active." "How do you know which is which?" Sebastian asked, his hand still resting on her belly, unwilling to break the connection. "Mother's intuition," Nadia replied. Then, more seriously, Dr. Chen pointed out their positions on the last ultrasound. "Alexander is on the left, Natalie on the right." Sebastian absorbed this information with the same intensity he devoted to market analyses and acquisition targets. His children had names now, positions, personalities already forming. No longer abstract concepts, but real beings with preferences and patterns. Another kick pressed against his palm, stronger this time. Something shifted in Sebastian's expression, awe replacing analytical assessment, emotion overcoming calculation. "Thank you," he said softly, finally withdrawing his hand, "for sharing that with me." The moment created a new intimacy between them, not romantic but profoundly human. CEO parents experiencing together what neither could fully share with anyone else. This newfound connection extended into the following weeks. Sebastian adjusted his schedule to attend every prenatal appointment, rearranging board meetings and delegating overseas calls. He researched pregnancy and child development with characteristic thoroughness, presenting Nadia with articles and studies he considered relevant. For her part, Nadia found herself increasingly comfortable in Sebastian's world. She used the media room as he'd suggested, creating a popular virtual reading series that attracted notice from parenting blogs. When Sebastian mentioned an upcoming charity gala supporting literacy programs, she offered suggestions that his events team implemented with surprising enthusiasm. Their collaboration extended to preparing the nursery, now relocated to the main house for practical reasons. They selected a nature theme with painted birch trees extending across walls, ceiling-mounted stars that would glow softly at night, and custom bookshelves filled with classics from both their childhoods. "My father built me shelves like these," Nadia explained as they arranged books one evening. "He filled them with adventure stories, anything that showed worlds beyond our fishing village." Sebastian, handling a well-worn copy of The Little Prince, nodded. "My nanny read to me every night until I was 8. Then my father decided it was indulgent and replaced story time with extra mathematics tutoring. The casual revelation, one of many small glimpses into his carefully guarded childhood, helped Nadia understand the man beside her. His driven nature, his emotional restraint, his determination that his children would have different experiences. Their growing partnership faced its first significant test when Sebastian's executive team requested an in-person strategy meeting at the Connecticut estate. With international travel restrictions affecting their Tokyo office, the estate offered privacy and convenience unavailable elsewhere. They'll be confined to the conference wing, Sebastian assured Nadia. Your routines won't be disrupted. Despite his precautions, Nadia encountered 3 executives in the main kitchen when she arrived to prepare lunch. Their conversation halted abruptly at her appearance, expressions ranging from curiosity to thinly veiled judgment. "You must be Miss Daniele," said a silver-haired man with calculating eyes. "Charles Wilson, Chief Counsel. These are our CFO Michael Trent and Q Victoria Huang." Nadia nodded politely, uncomfortable under their scrutiny but unwilling to retreat. "Nice to meet you all." "Don't mind me, I'm just preparing lunch. Sebastian mentioned you're a librarian," Victoria said, her tone suggesting this was roughly equivalent to street performer in her estimation of valuable professions. "Children's librarian, yes," Nadia confirmed, gathering ingredients with deliberate calm. "Currently developing virtual reading programs for expectant parents." Charles exchanged glances with Michael. "Admirable. Though I imagine your circumstances have complicated your career plans." The implication hung in the air that Nadia had somehow engineered her situation for financial gain, that her professional life was secondary to her uterine services. "My circumstances are unusual," Nadia agreed pleasantly, chopping vegetables with precise strokes, "but my career remains quite fulfilling. The New York Public Library system values innovation, particularly during challenging times." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Nevertheless, raising twins would be difficult on a librarian's salary. Fortunately, Sebastian is extremely supportive of my professional goals," Nadia interrupted smoothly. "We're still determining our co-parenting arrangements, but my career will continue regardless." The executives exchanged looks again, clearly recalibrating their assessment of this petite woman they'd assumed would be easily intimidated. Charles cleared his throat. "Sebastian mentioned you've been developing some interesting perspectives on early childhood literacy. Perhaps you could elaborate while we wait for him to join us." This olive branch, whether genuine or strategic, allowed Nadia to discuss her professional expertise with growing confidence. By the time Sebastian arrived 10 minutes later, she was deep in conversation with Victoria about digital accessibility for underserved communities. Sebastian paused in the doorway, taking in the unexpected tableau. His formidable executive team engaged with Nadia as a colleague rather than an inconvenience. "I see you've met," he observed, entering the kitchen. Miss Daniele was sharing fascinating insights about early language acquisition, Charles explained, his tone considerably warmer than earlier. "We've been discussing potential applications for the Archer Foundation's education initiative." Something like pride flickered across Sebastian's features as he glanced at Nadia. "She's remarkably knowledgeable in her field." The simple acknowledgement, professional respect from a man who rarely offered it, meant more to Nadia than she cared to admit. Later that evening, after the executives departed, Sebastian found Nadia in the nursery, arranging stuffed animals in the cribs. "My team was impressed with you," he said without preamble. "Victoria mentioned incorporating your recommendations into our community outreach program." Nadia smiled slightly. They seemed surprised that a pregnant librarian could string coherent sentences together. They were evaluating you, Sebastian admitted, trying to determine if you posed a risk to the company or to me personally, and their conclusion? That you're intelligent, composed under pressure, and not easily manipulated. His lips curved slightly. Qualities I'd already observed. The compliment warmed her unexpectedly. High praise from Sebastian Archer, merely accurate assessment, he countered, though pleasure at her response showed in his relaxed posture. Their conversation continued as they completed the nursery arrangements, discussing everything from childhood memories to parenting philosophies. This easy exchange, friends rather than adversaries, represented how far they'd traveled from their courthouse confrontation. As Nadia prepared to return to the guest house, Sebastian's housekeeper approached with a sealed envelope. This was delivered earlier, Miss Daniele. The security team screened it. Nadia accepted the envelope, noting no return address. Thank you, Mrs. Hendricks. Inside was a single sheet of paper containing a message composed of letters cut from magazines. The babies deserve their mother's family, not the man who destroyed it. Archer doesn't deserve Elise's children. I'm watching, waiting. Time will tell. Nadia's blood ran cold. She handed the letter wordlessly to Sebastian, whose expression hardened as he read it. Jonas, he said flatly. I suspected he might escalate. Who exactly is Jonas? Nadia demanded, her protective instincts flaring. You've mentioned him before, but never explained. Sebastian hesitated, clearly calculating how much to reveal. Finally, he gestured toward his study. You should sit down. This conversation is overdue. In the warmth of his wood-paneled study, Sebastian poured Nadia a glass of water before settling opposite her. His posture remained rigidly controlled, but something vulnerable showed in his eyes. Jonas Renner was Elise's younger brother, he began quietly. We were close once, friends before I ever met Elise. He introduced us, actually. Nadia listened intently as Sebastian described the relationship. Jonas's admiration for Sebastian's business acumen, their shared interests in mountaineering and chess, the brotherhood that formed before romance ever entered the picture. When Elise and I became involved, Jonas was supportive, enthusiastic even. When her diagnosis came, he moved into our guest room to help with her care. Sebastian's voice tightened with remembered pain. But as her condition worsened, something changed in Jonas. He became convinced that my business trips were abandonment, that I prioritized work over Elise's care. Was there truth to that? Nadia asked gently. Sebastian looked away. I was building a pharmaceutical division specifically to develop treatments for her cancer type. Every trip, every acquisition, every late night was ultimately for her. But from the outside, from Jonas's perspective, I was absent during critical moments. The regret in his voice spoke volumes about wounds still unhealed. When Elise died, Jonas broke completely. He accused me of killing her through neglect. He disappeared for months, then resurfaced with increasingly erratic behavior, showing up at board meetings, sending threatening messages to my executive team. Sebastian sighed deeply. Eventually, his family had him committed for psychiatric treatment. I thought the situation was contained until the embryo mix-up became public. Nadia absorbed this history, understanding flowing beneath her concern. You think he sent this letter? That he's targeting us because of the babies? They're Elise's genetic children, Sebastian confirmed grimly. In Jonas's disturbed mind, that makes them his family's legacy. My security team has been monitoring him since he first resurfaced, but he's become adept at avoiding surveillance. Nadia placed a protective hand over her growing belly. "Do you think he would actually harm us?" "I don't know," Sebastian admitted, the uncertainty clearly costing him. "The Jonas I knew would never hurt an innocent person, but grief and mental illness have transformed him. I can't predict his actions anymore." The vulnerability in this confession, Sebastian acknowledging a situation beyond his control, moved Nadia deeply. Without thinking, she reached across the space between them, covering his hand with hers. "Then we'll be careful," she said firmly. Together, Sebastian looked down at their joined hands, then back to her face, something indefinable shifting in his expression. "Yes," he agreed softly. Together. The letter accelerated changes already underway. For security reasons, Sebastian suggested Nadia relocate completely to the main house, keeping the guest house for appearances, but sleeping in a suite adjacent to the nursery. The arrangement made practical sense, placing her within the estate's most secure perimeter, though both acknowledged it represented another step toward permanent entanglement. In the days that followed, their routine adjusted to this new proximity. Mornings began with shared breakfast in the sunroom. Evenings often ended with prenatal yoga sessions Sebastian joined with surprising dedication. Their orbits aligned more frequently, creating moments of unexpected connection. One evening, returning from checking security monitors, Sebastian found Nadia in the library, struggling to reach a book on the top shelf. Without comment, he moved behind her, easily retrieving the volume she sought. "Thank you," she said, turning to accept it, and finding herself suddenly close enough to notice the faint scent of his cologne, the slight shadow of evening stubble along his jaw. Sebastian remained still, equally caught in the unexpected intimacy of their positions. His eyes dropped briefly to her lips before returning to meet her gaze, a question in their depths neither was prepared to ask or answer. "Any time," he replied, his voice lower than usual. He stepped back carefully, maintaining the invisible boundary they'd established. Colleagues, CO parents, perhaps friends, but nothing more complicated. Yet as Nadia retreated to her suite that night, both recognized the shifting nature of their arrangement. What began as hostile negotiation had evolved into reluctant cohabitation, then practical alliance, and now something undefined but undeniably charged. In the quiet of her room, Nadia spoke softly to the twins as she did each night. "Your father is a complicated man," she told them, feeling Alexander's now familiar kick in response. "But he's trying. We both are." Down the hall, Sebastian reviewed security footage from the estate's perimeter, hyper-vigilant since Jonas's letter. His phone chimed with a message from Charles. "Board expects custody decision before birth. What's our strategy?" Sebastian closed the message without responding, his certainty about that battle eroding with each passing day under the same roof as Nadia. The legal fight that once seemed imperative now felt increasingly irrelevant as they built something neither had anticipated, a fragile foundation for genuine family. The nursery between their rooms stood ready, painted with birch trees and stars, awaiting two lives whose existence had drawn adversaries into reluctant alliance. Whatever came next, Jonas's threats, custody negotiations, the birth itself, would unfold against this unexpected backdrop, two strangers becoming something more complicated with each passing day beneath one roof. The mid-June heatwave hit Connecticut with unexpected ferocity. While the estate's climate control maintained perfect temperature indoors, stepping outside felt like walking into a wall of humid warmth. Nadia found herself seeking shade in the gardens, her 20-week pregnant body increasingly sensitive to the weather. It was during one such afternoon retreat that Sebastian found her beneath a maple tree, reading tabloid headlines on her tablet. "You shouldn't subject yourself to that garbage," he said, settling beside her on the stone bench. Nadia didn't look up, hard to avoid when your face is on every cover. The media frenzy had escalated beyond their expectations. What began as business news, billionaire CEO involved in fertility clinic error, had morphed into a cultural phenomenon. Speculation about their relationship status, the twins' future, and potential inheritance filled gossip columns. Paparazzi drones attempted to breach estate security daily, seeking glimpses of Nadia's growing belly. "Billion-dollar babies inside the unlikely love nest," Nadia read aloud from one particularly lurid headline. "Sources close to the couple reveal romantic dinners and midnight meetings." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "My legal team will handle it." "That's your answer for everything," Nadia observed, not unkindly. "Some problems can't be litigated away." Before Sebastian could respond, his phone rang, his executive assistant's ringtone. He answered with visible reluctance. "The board has called an emergency meeting," he reported after ending the call. "They're convening tomorrow morning." Nadia set aside the tablet. "Because of us?" "Officially, to discuss quarterly projections." His expression suggested otherwise. "But actually to discuss the pregnant librarian living in your house," Nadia finished for him. "They're worried I'll damage the company's reputation." Sebastian's silence confirmed her assessment. "I'll come with you," she decided suddenly. "Absolutely not," Sebastian countered. "Board meetings are confidential." "I'm not suggesting I attend the meeting," Nadia clarified. "But I should be in New York. Show them I'm not hiding, not ashamed, not a liability to their precious company image." Sebastian studied her determined expression. "The media will be relentless. They already are," Nadia pointed out. "At least this way, we control the narrative." Her use of "we" rather than "you" didn't escape Sebastian's notice. The boundaries between their separate lives continued to blur with each passing week. The next morning, they traveled to Manhattan in Sebastian's armored town car. Nadia wore a simple but elegant maternity dress, navy blue with a subtle empire waist. That Sebastian's personal shopper had delivered. Her hair was swept into a neat chignon, subtle makeup enhancing her natural glow. She looked composed, confident, nothing like the frightened woman who'd fled to Connecticut months earlier. Outside Archer Tower, photographers swarmed like hungry predators. Sebastian's security team created a pathway through the chaos, his hand firmly supporting Nadia's lower back as they moved with practiced efficiency. "Miss Daniele, are you and Sebastian getting married? Sebastian, will the twins inherit your fortune?" Nadia maintained a gentle smile, neither engaging nor appearing disturbed by the attention. At the tower's entrance, she turned to Sebastian. "Go handle your board," she said quietly. "I'll be fine at the penthouse." Sebastian hesitated, clearly torn between corporate obligations and protective instincts. "You'll call if anything feels wrong? Security is monitoring all access points." "Stop worrying," Nadia assured him. "I'm just going to catch up on library planning while you deal with your shareholders." 3 hours later, Sebastian stormed into the penthouse, tie loosened, jaw rigid with controlled fury. He found Nadia in his home office, video chatting with her library team about fall programming. "I'll call back later," she told her colleagues, disconnecting when she saw Sebastian's expression. "That bad?" "They suggested I distance myself from the situation," he replied, the words clipped with anger. "Recommended I issue a statement clarifying our temporary arrangement and emphasizing separate residences post-birth." Nadia absorbed this, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach, where the twins kicked energetically. They're worried about stock prices. They're worried about control, Sebastian corrected, pacing the length of the office. My personal life has never affected company operations before. They don't know how to categorize you. Not a wife, not an employee, not a typical surrogate. What did you tell them? Sebastian stopped pacing, his expression softening as he looked at her. That my children and their mother are not negotiable assets to be managed for shareholder comfort. The simple declaration, his public claiming of responsibility, of connection, touched Nadia more deeply than she expected. "Thank you," she said quietly. Sebastian nodded once, then loosened his tie further. "How was your morning?" Nadia's expression clouded, mixed. "My team was supportive, but I received some uncomfortable messages from community members back in Amarapura." "What kind of messages?" "Cultural expectations are different there," Nadia explained carefully. "Unmarried pregnancy brings shame to traditional families. Add American tabloids and a billionaire father. My relatives are struggling to process it all." Sebastian frowned. "Have they directly criticized you?" "Not exactly, but my father sounded strained during our call yesterday." Nadia sighed, rubbing her temples. "He's also not doing well physically. Heart problems, refusing to see specialists." "Would visiting help?" Sebastian asked, surprising her with his immediate focus on solutions rather than abstract sympathy. Nadia looked up, startled by the suggestion. "Visit Amarapura? Now? Why not? You're cleared for travel until 30 weeks. We could go next week, stay for a few days." "We?" Nadia repeated. "You would come to Amarapura?" Sebastian shrugged slightly. "Your father should meet the man responsible for his grandchildren." The unexpected offer, Sebastian willingly entering her world after she'd been thrust into his, shifted something fundamental between them. Not merely accommodation, but active participation in bridging their differences. 1 week later, they stepped off a private jet into the humid coastal air of Amarapura. Though Sebastian had offered 5-star accommodations, Nadia insisted they stay at her family home, a modest 2-story building near the harbor where she'd grown up. Raj Danieli waited on the porch, his tall frame thinner than Nadia remembered, grey streaking his once black hair. His weathered face broke into a smile when he saw his daughter, though wariness remained in his eyes as Sebastian approached behind her. "Papa," Nadia called, embracing her father tightly. "My little fish," he murmured in Tamil, his traditional greeting since her childhood. His gaze dropped to her rounded belly, emotions flickering across his face, joy, concern, resignation. "You look well." "This is Sebastian," Nadia said in English, stepping back to make introductions. "Sebastian, my father, Raj Danieli." The two men sized each other up, the billionaire CEO in carefully casual designer clothes, and the fishing captain in his worn button-down shirt. Two worlds, two value systems, connected only through Nadia and the babies she carried. "Thank you for welcoming us into your home," Sebastian said formally, extending his hand. Raj hesitated only briefly before accepting the handshake. "You will find it very different from your usual accommodations, Mr. Archer." "That's what I'm counting on," Sebastian replied with unexpected humility. Inside, the house revealed Nadia's origins in every detail. Hand-woven rugs covering worn wooden floors, walls decorated with fishing nets and family photographs, the scent of cardamom and cinnamon hanging in the air. Sebastian observed everything with quiet attention, noting the bookshelves in every room, the faded university pennant in the hallway, the careful patching of furniture too valuable in memory to discard despite age. "Your room is ready," Raj told Sebastian, gesturing upstairs. It was Nadia's grandfather's study, not fancy but private. It's perfect, Sebastian assured him, though the single bed and desk barely accommodated his tall frame. I appreciate your hospitality. That evening, neighboring families arrived bearing food and barely disguised curiosity about the foreigner in their midst. Sebastian found himself the center of attention, fielding polite but probing questions about his intentions, his business, his knowledge of Amarapuran customs. "Will you marry before the babies come?" asked an elderly aunt, her directness making Nadia choke on her tea. "Our arrangement is evolving," Sebastian answered diplomatically, surprising Nadia with his patience. Later, as neighbors departed, Nadia found Sebastian on the back porch, watching fishing boats return to harbor in the twilight. "You handled that remarkably well," she observed, joining him at the railing. "I negotiate hostile takeovers for a living," Sebastian replied with a small smile. "Your aunties are formidable but not unprecedented." Nadia laughed softly. "They mean well. Family is everything here." "I can see that," Sebastian said thoughtfully. "I can see you in this place. Your resilience, your practicality. It explains a lot about who you are." The observation, personal, perceptive, caught Nadia off guard. "Thank you for coming. It means more than I expected." Sebastian turned to face her, moonlight illuminating his features. "Your world matters to me because it shaped you, and you're the mother of my children." The simple statement contained complexities neither was ready to fully examine. Over the next 2 days, Sebastian immersed himself in Amarapuran life with surprising willingness. He accompanied Raj to the morning fish market, sampled local delicacies without hesitation, and listened attentively to stories of Nadia's childhood. On their third evening, however, Sebastian noticed Raj struggling to climb the porch steps, stopping to catch his breath, one hand pressed to his chest. "Your father needs medical attention," he told Nadia privately afterward. "His color is poor, his breathing labored." "I know," Nadia admitted, concern etching her features. "But he refuses to see doctors. Says they're too expensive, though that's just his pride. He doesn't want charity, especially from me," Sebastian finished when she hesitated. "From the wealthy foreigner who got his unmarried daughter pregnant." Nadia didn't contradict this assessment. "Our relationship is complicated from his perspective." Sebastian nodded thoughtfully. "I understand pride. Leave it with me." The next morning, a local doctor, elderly, respected, trusted by the community, arrived for a social call with Raj. Their conversation moved naturally to health matters, the doctor casually offering to check Raj's heart while I'm here anyway. When Nadia questioned this coincidence, Sebastian merely shrugged. Sometimes connections are useful beyond business. The doctor's diagnosis confirmed Sebastian's suspicions. Raj needed medication and lifestyle modifications to address developing heart failure. When Raj balked at the cost of treatment, the doctor mentioned a new regional health program covering fishing communities, sponsored anonymously, established months earlier. That night, Nadia confronted Sebastian in the garden behind the house. "There was no health program until yesterday, was there?" Sebastian met her gaze directly. "The funding was arranged discreetly. Your father keeps his dignity, receives necessary care." "Why?" Nadia asked, genuinely puzzled by his intervention. "You barely know him." "He's your father," Sebastian said simply. "Alexander and Natalie's grandfather. Family, the word, so casually offered yet carrying such weight, made something catch in Nadia's throat. Sebastian had extended his concept of family to include her father without hesitation, without fanfare, without expecting recognition. "Thank you," she whispered, emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Sebastian nodded once, accepting her gratitude without requiring elaboration. Their final day in Amarapura coincided with a local festival. Colorful banners hung across narrow streets, music filled the air, and children ran with sparklers as twilight descended. Sebastian and Nadia walked along the harbor, sampling street food and absorbing the joyful atmosphere. "I understand now," Sebastian said as they paused to watch dancers in traditional costumes. "Why you left, but also why this place still holds you." Nadia glanced at him, surprised by the insight. "It was never enough, but it's always home. Our children will know this place," Sebastian promised unexpectedly. "Your heritage, your language, your traditions, they deserve both worlds." Before Nadia could respond, her phone chimed with an incoming call. Sebastian's head of security, Frank Reynolds. "Ms. Daniele, is Mr. Archer with you?" Frank's tone carried unusual urgency. "Yes, he's right here," Nadia confirmed, passing the phone to Sebastian. Sebastian's expression darkened as he listened. "When? How certain are you?" "Yes, send everything to my secure server. We're returning tomorrow as planned." He ended the call, his demeanor shifting from relaxed tourist to focused CEO in an instant. "What's wrong?" Nadia asked, one hand instinctively moving to her belly. "Security matter at the estate," Sebastian replied vaguely. "Nothing requiring immediate return." But his eyes told a different story. Something significant had occurred, something he wasn't sharing. The wall between them, nearly invisible during their time in Amarapura, suddenly reasserted itself. The journey home passed in relative silence. Sebastian absorbed in his tablet, reviewing documents with increasing intensity. Nadia respected his focus, using the time to process her own emotions about their trip, her father's improved outlook, her community's gradual acceptance, Sebastian's unexpected integration into her world. Upon returning to Connecticut, Sebastian immediately sequestered himself with Frank Reynolds in his study, leaving Nadia to wonder what urgent security matter demanded such attention. Her answer came that evening when Sebastian appeared at her door, his expression grave. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "About Jonas Renner." In Sebastian's study, photographs and documents covered his desk. Surveillance images, medical records, employment files. "My security team has been investigating Jonas since his threatening letter," Sebastian explained, his voice carefully controlled. "They discovered something disturbing." He handed Nadia a personnel file from reproductive specialists of Manhattan. Jonas worked there, night security part-time, under an alias. He was on duty the night of your procedure. Nadia stared at the employment record, understanding dawning slowly. "You think he was involved in the mix-up? That it wasn't an accident?" "There's more," Sebastian continued, displaying security camera footage on his laptop. "This is from the clinic's embryo storage room. The timestamp matches your procedure date. The grainy video showed a man, face partially obscured but matching Jonas's height and build, accessing the storage unit, deliberately switching labels on 2 containers. He tampered with the embryos," Nadia whispered, horror washing through her. "He meant for this to happen." Sebastian nodded grimly. "Jonas knew I preserved embryos after Elise died. He likely monitored the clinic's schedule, saw your appointment, and seized the opportunity." "But why?" Nadia demanded, trying to process this revelation. "Why would he do this to us, to strangers?" Sebastian's expression tightened with old pain. "To punish me. to force me to face children I created with Elise but never intended to raise, to make me confront the family I might have had with her. The cruelty of this plan, using unborn children as weapons, left Nadia breathless with anger. He manipulated all of us. Me, you, the babies. I should have realized sooner, Sebastian said, self-recrimination evident in his voice. The coincidence was too perfect. My embryos specifically switched with yours. You couldn't have known, Nadia insisted, surprising herself with the impulse to comfort him. None of this is your fault. Sebastian looked up, meeting her gaze directly. I've contacted the clinic's board and the authorities. Jonas will face criminal charges when apprehended. When? He's disappeared. My team tracked him to Chicago last week, but the trail has gone cold. The implications settled heavily between them. Jonas remained at large, his obsession with Sebastian unresolved, his willingness to manipulate lives already demonstrated. Should we be worried? Nadia asked, protective instincts flaring. About the babies? About us? Security protocols remain in place, Sebastian assured her. The estate is secure. But yes, we should be vigilant until he's found. Nadia absorbed this information, one hand resting on her stomach where the twins moved restlessly, as if sensing her distress. These children, created in grief, implanted through malice, growing in love, carried a history neither parent had chosen. Why tell me now? She asked finally. You've clearly known for days. Sebastian hesitated, something vulnerable crossing his features. I wanted to protect you from this knowledge, from the ugliness of it. But after Amarapura, after seeing you with your father, your community, I realized you deserve honesty, complete honesty. The admission, his recognition of her strength, her right to full participation in their shared reality, moved Nadia deeply. This man who controlled everything, who built walls and empires with equal efficiency, had chosen transparency over protection. Thank you, she said softly, for trusting me with the truth. Sebastian stood, moving around the desk until he stood before her, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his grey eyes. Nadia, he began, voice uncharacteristically uncertain. These past months, living together, preparing for the twins, my perspective has changed. Mine too, she admitted, her heart accelerating at his proximity. When we first met, I saw you as an obstacle, someone between me and my children. His voice dropped lower. Now I see you as essential, not just to them, but to... He stopped, visibly struggling with emotions long suppressed. Nadia reached up impulsively, her palm against his cheek. To you, she finished for him. The gesture broke something in Sebastian's careful composure. His hand covered hers, holding it against his face as if anchoring himself. Yes, he whispered. To me, neither could say afterward who moved first. Perhaps they moved together, drawn by forces building since that first hostile meeting months earlier. Sebastian's lips found hers with gentle question rather than demand, giving her every opportunity to retreat. Instead, Nadia leaned closer, answering his uncertainty with quiet certainty. The kiss deepened slowly, transforming from tentative exploration to confirmation of truths both had been avoiding. That somewhere between courtroom battles and nursery planning, between Connecticut estates and Amarapuran fishing villages, they had found something neither expected, connection transcending circumstance. When they finally separated, Sebastian rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed as if memorizing the moment. This complicates everything, Nadia whispered. Everything was already complicated, Sebastian countered with a ghost of a smile. This just makes it worthwhile. In that moment, surrounded by evidence of Jonas's malice, They found something neither had sought, not just co-parents united by external threat, but two people choosing each other despite every reason not to. Did you see that coming? The billionaire CEO and the children's librarian finding genuine connection amid such chaos. Share your thoughts on their developing relationship in the comments below. Could a kiss built on honesty rather than romance be the foundation these unexpected parents need to face what's coming next? Morning sunlight filtered through the library's east-facing windows, casting warm patterns across Sebastian's desk, where coffee had grown cold. 3 days had passed since their first kiss. 3 days of cautious smiles, lingering touches, and conversations that stretched late into the night. The wall between them hadn't crumbled entirely, but doorways had appeared, allowing glimpses into regions previously guarded. Sebastian stood at the window, watching Nadia walk through the garden below, her sundress flowing around her 22-week belly. The simple sight, her hand trailing across blooming roses, her face tilted toward the sun, triggered an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. Protectiveness mingled with something deeper, something he'd buried with Elise years ago. When Nadia entered the library minutes later, Sebastian remained by the window, his posture revealing tension she'd learned to recognize. "What's wrong?" she asked, settling into a leather armchair. "Nothing," he replied automatically, then corrected himself with visible effort. "Everything. Jonas is still out there. The twins will arrive in less than 4 months, and he gestured between them. "This is uncharted territory." Nadia nodded, giving him space to continue. Their relationship existed in the undefined space between CO parents and something more intimate, both aware that external pressure could shatter their fragile progress. "I need to tell you about Elise," Sebastian said suddenly. "The complete story. You deserve to know, especially now. The offer, this voluntary dismantling of his most fortified emotional walls, indicated how dramatically their dynamic had shifted." "I'm listening," Nadia said gently. Sebastian sat across from her, hands clasped between his knees, the powerful CEO momentarily replaced by a man still carrying grief like a hidden wound. "I met Elise Morgan 6 years ago at a pharmaceutical conference in Boston. She was brilliant, neurochemistry, specialized research into synaptic regeneration. Her presentation challenged Archer Pharmaceuticals' approach to Alzheimer's treatment. A small smile touched his lips. She eviscerated our research protocol during the Q&A. It was magnificent. Nadia could picture it. Sebastian, captivated by intellectual challenge rather than physical beauty, attracted during the Q&A. It was magnificent. Nadia could picture it. Sebastian, captivated by intellectual challenge rather than physical beauty, attracted to a mind that matched his own. Jonas introduced us afterward. He worked in her lab as a research assistant, always in his sister's shadow but proud of her accomplishments. We began collaborating professionally, then personally. Sebastian's expression softened with memory. Elise was extraordinary, brilliant but kind, ambitious but ethical. She pushed me to be better, to remember the human impact behind business decisions. The pain in his voice revealed more than words could. This wasn't merely past romance but transformative connection. We were together 2 years when the diagnosis came. Aggressive ovarian cancer, already metastasized. Sebastian's hands tightened. We'd been discussing marriage, children. The diagnosis accelerated everything. We harvested eggs immediately, created embryos before she began treatment. He rose, unable to remain still through this recounting. I threw everything at her cancer. Experimental treatments, specialists flown in from around the world, a research team dedicated solely to her case. Meanwhile, Jonas moved in to help with her care while I traveled, securing treatments not yet available in the US. Sebastian paused at the window again, his back to Nadia. I was in Tokyo when she took a sudden turn. The acquisition I was finalizing would have given us access to a promising Japanese immunotherapy. I chartered a jet immediately, but... His voice broke slightly. Nadia wanted to go to him but sensed he needed to complete this confession uninterrupted. I arrived 4 hours too late. She never regained consciousness after the seizure. Jonas was there, I wasn't. The simple facts conveyed devastation beyond measure. At the funeral, Jonas accused me publicly of prioritizing business over Elise, said I'd chosen Archer Pharmaceuticals over the woman I claimed to love. Sebastian turned back to Nadia, his composure fractured but not broken. Was he right? Some days I think so. I believed I could save her through medical advancement, through the power and connections my company provided. Perhaps I should have simply been present for her final months. The raw honesty in this admission, Sebastian acknowledging failure in the arena where he defined himself, moved Nadia deeply. After the funeral, Jonas fell apart completely. Hospitalization, restraining orders, erratic behavior. Then he disappeared for nearly a year. When he resurfaced, he seemed stabilized, took the security position at the fertility clinic, maintained regular psychiatric appointments. Sebastian shook his head. I should have monitored him more closely, should have recognized his stability was facade rather than recovery. You couldn't have known he would target innocent parties, Nadia argued gently. But I understand his motivation now, Sebastian countered. The embryos represented Elise's legacy, children she helped create, future she envisioned. In Jonas's mind, I'd failed her. He couldn't allow me to simply store those embryos indefinitely while building my empire. So he forced the issue, ensured her children would be born, that I would face daily reminders of what might have been. Nadia absorbed this, one hand resting on her belly where the twins moved. He used me as a weapon against you. Yes, Sebastian acknowledged grimly, and the children as leverage. The weight of this knowledge settled between them, their entire situation orchestrated by a grieving, unstable man seeking vengeance against perceived betrayal. I understand his pain, Nadia said softly, but not his methods. These babies deserve better than to be pawns in his revenge. Sebastian crossed to her chair, kneeling before her with uncharacteristic vulnerability. They'll never be pawns to me, Nadia. Neither will you. Whatever began in manipulation has become... He stopped, searching for words that wouldn't diminish the complex reality they'd constructed from chaos. Has become something real, Nadia finished for him, her hands finding his. Something neither of us expected. Sebastian nodded, gratitude evident in his expression. Something worth protecting, worth fighting for. As if responding to this declaration, Nadia felt a sharp pain lance through her abdomen. She gasped, doubling forward. Nadia? Sebastian's voice sharpened with alarm. Something's wrong, she managed, panic rising as another spasm gripped her. The baby's... Sebastian moved with decisive efficiency, lifting her into his arms despite her protests. Frank, he called sharply. Medical emergency. The security team mobilized instantly, calls to Nadia's obstetrician, the helicopter pad prepared for emergency transport, vital signs monitored by the estate's medical staff. Through it all, Sebastian remained beside her, his exterior calm belied by the tension visible in his jaw, the way his hand gripped hers as if he could physically anchor her to safety. Dr. Chen met them at Greenwich Hospital's private entrance, her expression professionally reassuring as she directed Nadia to an examination room. Braxton Hicks contractions, likely exacerbated by dehydration, she diagnosed after thorough examination. Not preterm labor, but concerning enough to monitor overnight. Relief washed over Sebastian's features, though his posture remained vigilant. "The twins are all right?" "Both heartbeats strong and regular," Dr. Chen confirmed. "But Nadia needs rest, hydration, and reduced stress. Twins create additional pressure on the maternal system. We need to be cautious going forward." Sebastian nodded, absorbing this information with the same intensity he devoted to critical business data. "What precautions should we implement?" Dr. Chen outlined recommendations: increased rest periods, dietary adjustments, twice-weekly monitoring, while Nadia listened with growing frustration at her body's limitations. "I'm not an invalid," she protested when the doctor left. "I can still function normally." Sebastian's expression remained serious. "This isn't negotiable, Nadia. Your health and the twins' safety come first." "Don't use that tone," she warned. "The CEO voice doesn't work on me." His features softened slightly. "I'm not trying to control you, He hesitated, vulnerability briefly visible. "I'm scared. Today reminded me how quickly everything can change." The admission, this powerful man acknowledging fear, disarmed Nadia's defenses. "I'm scared too," she confessed. "But we can't live in constant anxiety. The babies feel everything I feel." Sebastian considered this, then nodded slowly. "Reasonable compromise. You follow medical recommendations. I'll try not to hover excessively." "Try being the operative word," Nadia noted with a small smile. "I make no promises regarding hovering," Sebastian replied, the ghost of humor returning to his eyes. Their fragile peace established, Nadia was released the following morning with strict instructions to rest. Sebastian personally supervised her return to the estate, installing her in the sunroom with pillows, hydration monitoring, and emergency communication protocols that bordered on excessive. "You realize the security team doesn't need hourly updates on my water consumption," Nadia pointed out dryly, as Sebastian programmed yet another reminder into his phone. "Humor me," he replied, not looking up from the device. Despite her protests, Nadia found Sebastian's protective instincts oddly comforting, evidence of genuine concern beyond genetic connection to the twins. This man who commanded global business operations now applied that same focused intensity to her well-being, treating her comfort as mission-critical priority. The health scare accelerated changes already underway at the estate. Sebastian rearranged his schedule to work primarily from home, delegating international calls and postponing non-essential travel. He personally oversaw completion of the nursery, consulting Nadia on every detail while insisting she supervise from a comfortable chair. The feng shui consultant suggested moving the cribs to the eastern wall, he reported one afternoon, tablet displaying nursery floor plans. Nadia laughed in disbelief. "You hired a feng shui consultant for the nursery?" "3, actually. I wanted diverse perspectives." Sebastian appeared entirely serious. "The first recommended against navy blue accents, claiming they would inhibit creative development." "And you believe that?" Sebastian looked mildly offended. "I conducted comprehensive research on color psychology in infant environments. The literature is inconclusive, but suggests certain tonal values may influence cognitive processing." Nadia's amusement faded into something warmer. This brilliant, analytical man was applying his considerable intellect to creating the perfect environment for their children, researching, consulting experts, optimizing variables just as he would for any critical project. "The cribs are perfect where they are," she assured him. "Alexander and Natalie won't care about feng shui." Sebastian nodded, making a notation on his tablet. "What about the bookshelf position?" The child development specialist suggested reading nooks should receive natural light but avoid direct sun exposure on paper materials. "Sebastian," Nadia said gently, taking his hand, "the nursery is beautiful, perfect. You can stop optimizing now." He looked up, momentarily disoriented by the interruption to his planning. "There are still 17 items on the preparation checklist." "Come sit with me," she insisted, tugging him toward the window seat. "Feel this." She placed his hand on her rounded belly, where Alexander was performing what felt like somersaults. Sebastian's expression transformed as he felt the strong movements, analytical focus giving way to wonder. "That's Alexander," Nadia explained. "He's always more active after lunch. Natalie prefers evenings. They have preferences already." Sebastian marveled, his hand remaining connected to her belly. "They're people," Nadia reminded him softly. "Not projects to optimize." Understanding dawned in Sebastian's eyes, recognition that his controlled approach stemmed from deeper fear. "I want to get everything right," he admitted quietly. "For them. For you." "I know," Nadia assured him. "But some things can't be perfected through planning. Sometimes we just have to be present." The lesson, one Elise had perhaps tried teaching him years earlier, finally landed. Sebastian nodded slowly, his hands still absorbing the twins' movements, his focus shifting from preparation to presence. Their peaceful afternoon shattered at precisely 4:17 p.m. when Nadia's phone rang, displaying an unknown number. She answered on speaker, Sebastian still beside her. "Hello?" Silence, then Nadia Danieli, the voice, male, unnervingly calm, sent ice through her veins. "How are my niece and nephew today?" Sebastian stiffened, immediately signaling his security team to trace the call. "Jonas," Nadia acknowledged, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "How did you get this number?" "I have many resources," he replied, an unsettling lightness in his tone. "Just checking on Elise's babies, making sure Sebastian is treating their mother appropriately." "The babies are fine," Nadia said carefully, following Sebastian's silent guidance to keep Jonas talking. "Healthy and growing. Good, good." Jonas's voice dropped lower. "And Sebastian? Playing devoted father now? How convenient for his image." Sebastian remained perfectly still, eyes fixed on Nadia's phone. "This isn't about Sebastian's image," Nadia replied with genuine conviction. "It's about two innocent children." "Innocent," Jonas repeated, the word twisting with bitterness. "Nothing connected to Sebastian Archer is innocent. He corrupts everything he touches." "You'll learn that, Nadia, perhaps too late." "What do you want, Jonas?" Nadia asked directly, one hand protectively covering her belly. A soft laugh. "Want? I want justice. I want Sebastian to feel what I felt, watching someone you love slip away while you stand helpless. I want him to understand loss." The threat, implied rather than stated, hung in the air between them. "Jonas," Sebastian spoke finally, his voice controlled. "This is between us. Leave Nadia and the children out of it." "Sebastian," false delight colored Jonas's tone. "How nice of you to join. Hovering protectively, are you? Playing the role of devoted partner after abandoning my sister in her final hours?" "I never abandoned Elise," Sebastian countered evenly. "I was securing treatment options. You were closing deals." Jonas's calm facade cracked, raw fury bleeding through. "Building your empire while she died alone." "She wasn't alone," Sebastian replied, pain evident beneath his composed exterior. "You were with her. For that I'll always be grateful." The simple acknowledgement, Sebastian's recognition of Jonas's role during Elise's final days, created momentary silence. "Pretty words," Jonas finally responded. though something in his voice had shifted. Too late for Elise. Too late for me. It's not too late for Alexander and Natalie, Nadia interjected softly. They deserve to know their mother's family, the good parts, the loving parts, the person you were before grief transformed you. Another silence, longer this time. When Jonas spoke again, his voice carried complex emotion. I'll be in touch. Soon. The call disconnected. Sebastian immediately turned to his security chief, who had entered silently during the conversation. Location? Sebastian demanded. Signal triangulated to an industrial area in Queens, Frank reported. Team already dispatched to investigate. Sebastian nodded sharply. I want the estate on highest security protocol. No one enters or exits without direct authorization. Already implemented, sir. As Frank departed to coordinate security measures, Sebastian turned back to Nadia, his expression grim. He's escalating. The call was a warning, letting us know he can reach us despite precautions. Nadia nodded, her hand still protectively covering her belly. He sounded unstable, more emotional than calculating. That makes him more dangerous, Sebastian observed. Unpredictable. They sat in tense silence, the peaceful afternoon irreparably fractured by Jonas's intrusion. Despite the estate's comprehensive security, vulnerability settled over them like a physical presence, the awareness that safety remained relative, protection imperfect. 3 hours later, Frank returned with an update. We've identified a warehouse leased under one of Jonas's aliases. Surveillance indicates recent occupation. Sebastian absorbed this information with clinical focus. Options. We can maintain surveillance, alert authorities, or conduct preliminary investigation, Frank outlined. Given his connection to Ms. Danieli and the twins, police involvement requires careful consideration. The unspoken concern hung between them. Media attention, public scrutiny, potential escalation if Jonas felt cornered. Preliminary investigation, Sebastian decided. Minimum team, maximum discretion. I'll accompany you. Absolutely not, Nadia interjected sharply. You can't seriously be considering confronting him personally. Sebastian's expression remained resolute. This situation exists because of my past with Elise. I won't delegate responsibility now. And if something happens to you? Nadia challenged. What then? Alexander and Natalie grow up without their father because he played hero instead of acting sensibly. The argument, framed in terms of parental responsibility rather than personal safety, landed effectively. Sebastian's resolve visibly wavered. She's right, sir, Frank added. Professional assessment suggests your presence could escalate the situation. Sebastian exhaled slowly, conceding the point. Surveillance only. No engagement without direct authorization. As the security team departed, Nadia moved to Sebastian, taking his hands in hers. I understand wanting to protect us personally, but sometimes protection means making difficult choices. Sebastian nodded, the tension in his shoulders revealing how deeply Jonas's threats had affected him. I've never been good at delegating what matters most. Practice, Nadia suggested gently. For the twins' sake, the next 12 hours passed intense vigilance. Sebastian received hourly updates from the surveillance team, sharing information with Nadia rather than shielding her, another evolution in their partnership. Together, they reviewed security footage, location reports, and psychological assessments of Jonas's likely intentions. Just after midnight, Frank called with urgent news. Movement at the warehouse. Jonas has returned with several large containers. Behavior suggests imminent relocation. Sebastian exchanged glances with Nadia, who nodded her agreement. Alert local authorities, he instructed. Maintain distance until they arrive. The following hours stretched interminably as they waited for updates. Finally, Sebastian's phone rang with Frank's report. Police have Jonas in custody, he confirmed. Found significant evidence inside the warehouse, surveillance equipment, photos of the estate, detailed schedules of Miss Daniele's appointments. Also recovered several unregistered firearms. Relief washed over Nadia, though Sebastian's expression remained cautious. Charges? Multiple, Frank confirmed. Weapons possession, stalking, conspiracy. The clinic has also filed charges regarding the embryo tampering. With his psychiatric history, he'll likely face evaluation before trial. After the call ended, Sebastian and Nadia sat together in weighted silence. The immediate threat had passed, yet resolution felt incomplete. Jonas contained, but the emotional aftermath of his actions still reverberating through their lives. "It's over," Nadia said finally. For now, Sebastian qualified, years of business strategy making him cautious about definitive conclusions. The legal process takes time. Nadia nodded, understanding his reservation. "But we're safe tonight. The twins are safe." "Yes," Sebastian agreed, his hand finding hers. "Tonight, we're safe." Later, as dawn approached, they stood together in the completed nursery. 2 cribs waited beneath a ceiling painted with stars and constellations. Bookshelves lined one wall, already filled with carefully selected volumes. A rocking chair sat in the corner beneath soft lamplight. "It's perfect," Nadia whispered, leaning against Sebastian's solid presence. "It's ready," he corrected, his arm around her shoulders. "For whatever comes next." The phrase encompassed more than nursery preparation, acknowledging the uncertain path still ahead. Legal proceedings against Jonas, the twins' birth, their evolving relationship and undefined future as family. Sebastian pressed a gentle kiss to Nadia's temple, the gesture conveying what words couldn't fully express: commitment beyond biology, connection beyond circumstance. From chaos and manipulation had emerged something neither expected: partnership forged through shared challenge, strengthened by complementary resilience. "Whatever comes next," Nadia repeated softly, her hand entwined with his. "We'll face it together." Outside the nursery windows, security teams maintained vigilant patrols. In a police holding cell across the state, Jonas Renner sat in apparent defeat, his expression unreadable as detectives catalogued evidence of his obsession. The chaos he'd orchestrated had been contained, the immediate danger neutralized. Yet as Sebastian and Nadia found momentary peace in their completed nursery, neither could shake the subtle warning still echoing from Jonas's call. "I'll be in touch." Soon, the twins shifted restlessly within Nadia, as if sensing the complex emotions surrounding their creation, their existence, their future. Whatever peace had been achieved remained provisional, a pause rather than conclusion in the story Jonas had set in motion. Did that resolution seem too easy? Does Jonas have another move planned from behind bars? Hit that notification bell right now to catch the next twist in Nadia and Sebastian's journey toward parenthood. The real battle may just be beginning. July settled over Connecticut with oppressive heat and unusual stillness. 2 weeks had passed since Jonas Renner's arrest, and the estate gradually relaxed its highest security protocols. Armed guards remained, but their presence grew less visible, stationed at perimeter checkpoints rather than patrolling garden paths. The helicopter that had hovered daily returned to its hangar. Life attempted normalcy. At 26 weeks pregnant, Nadia's body had transformed dramatically. Her slender frame now carried the twins with graceful determination, though walking required conscious effort and sleep proved increasingly elusive. Sebastian had adapted to these changes with characteristic efficiency, installing handrails in strategic locations, researching specialized pregnancy pillows, ensuring her favorite cooling mango lassi remained stocked in the refrigerator. One humid Tuesday morning, Nadia sat in the estate's media room, recording a virtual storytime session for her library's summer program. Sebastian paused in the doorway, momentarily transfixed by the sight of her reading to an unseen audience of children, her animated expressions bringing dinosaur characters to life. "And that's how Triceratops learned to share," she concluded, closing the colorful book. "I'll see you next week for another adventure." She ended the recording, looking up to find Sebastian watching her. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough to learn valuable lessons about dinosaur friendship," he replied with a small smile. "You're remarkable with children, even virtual ones." Nadia's hand moved instinctively to her rounded belly. "Practice for the real thing." Sebastian entered fully, handing her a glass of water with precisely 3 ice cubes, her preferred configuration. Frank called with an update on Jonas. "The psychological evaluation is complete, and," Nadia prompted when he hesitated, "diagnosis of delusional disorder with paranoid features, exacerbated by complicated grief." Sebastian's clinical recitation couldn't mask his underlying concern. "The court has ordered treatment before trial." Nadia absorbed this information, uncertain whether to feel relief or heightened worry. "So he's receiving help. That's good, right?" "Ideally, yes." Sebastian's measured response revealed his skepticism. "The facility has excellent security protocols." The qualifier hung between them, acknowledgement that even excellent protocols could fail against determined opposition. Neither voiced this concern aloud, maintaining the fragile normalcy they'd constructed since Jonas's arrest. That evening, they dined on the terrace overlooking the estate's manicured grounds. Summer twilight extended the day, fireflies beginning their nightly dance across the lawn. Sebastian had loosened his tie, jacket discarded hours earlier, small concessions to the heat and to their evolving relationship. The board scheduled an emergency session for Friday, he mentioned between bites of grilled salmon. "I'll need to be in Manhattan overnight." Nadia set down her fork. "Is this about the Jenkins acquisition or about us?" Sebastian's slight hesitation confirmed her suspicion. "Both. The timing of the acquisition is sensitive, but certain board members have expressed concerns about my focus recently. They think I'm a distraction," Nadia translated bluntly. "They think family commitments might conflict with corporate priorities," Sebastian corrected diplomatically. "It's not personal, it feels personal when they're discussing my children's father." Sebastian's expression softened at her phrasing, her casual claiming of him as the twins' father rather than merely their biological contributor. "Corporate boards dislike variables they can't control. You and the twins represent exactly that." "So, what happens at this meeting?" "I present quarterly projections, outline acquisition strategy, and remind them who built this company." Sebastian's tone shifted subtly, revealing the steel beneath his polished exterior. "Personal matters remain personal." Nadia nodded, knowing this battle was one Sebastian must fight alone. Despite their growing partnership, certain worlds remained separate. Her library domain, his corporate empire, intersecting but not integrated. "When do you leave?" she asked. "Thursday afternoon. Back Friday evening." Sebastian hesitated before adding, "Frank will maintain full security protocols during my absence." The reassurance, unnecessary but offered nonetheless, reminded Nadia that Jonas's shadow still loomed despite the peaceful evening. After dinner, they walked the garden paths together, a nightly ritual developed during recent weeks. Sebastian's hand rested lightly at the small of Nadia's back, providing support without imposing. They discussed nursery details, pediatrician options, birth plan preferences. Ordinary preparations, extraordinary, only in the circumstances that created them. "I've been thinking about the birth announcement," Nadia said as they rounded the rose garden. "How public should it be?" Sebastian considered this carefully. "Security suggests minimal public information, names but not birth dates, no hospital details, no photos for at least 6 months. That seems extreme," Nadia observed. "Most parents share birth announcements immediately. Most parents aren't targeted by unstable individuals with vendetta fixations," Sebastian countered gently. "Once Jonas completes treatment and legal proceedings conclude, we can reassess." Nadia nodded reluctantly, acknowledging the wisdom in his caution while mourning another normal experience altered by their unusual situation. They completed their garden circuit in companionable silence, Sebastian occasionally identifying constellation patterns visible through breaks in the summer foliage. This shared quietude, comfortable rather than strained, represented significant evolution in their relationship. The peace shattered at 6:17 a.m. Thursday morning when Sebastian's secure phone rang with Frank's emergency tone. Nadia woke instantly, maternal instincts already heightened by late pregnancy. Sebastian answered, his voice immediately alert despite the early hour. "Report." Whatever Frank said transformed Sebastian's expression from concern to cold fury. "When? How?" "Implement Protocol Omega immediately. Full team. I want hourly sweeps and direct monitoring." "Yes." "Inform local authorities, but maintain media blackout." He ended the call, already moving with practiced efficiency, accessing his secure tablet, activating security protocols, sending encrypted messages to his team. "Sebastian?" Nadia prompted, fear tightening her chest. "What's happened?" He paused, visibly assembling his thoughts before delivering the news. "Jonas escaped custody during transfer to the psychiatric facility. Approximately 10 hours ago." The simple statement detonated their hard-won normalcy. 10 hours. Jonas had been free for 10 hours, planning, moving, potentially already implementing whatever revenge he'd contemplated during his incarceration. "How?" Nadia managed, one hand protectively covering her belly where the twins shifted restlessly. Medical transport van was found abandoned. 2 guards unconscious, driver missing. Sebastian continued preparations as he spoke, retrieving his secure phone. "Evidence suggests insider assistance. The investigation is ongoing." His clinical detachment, retreating into operational mode rather than emotional reaction, felt simultaneously reassuring and frustrating. Nadia struggled to match his compartmentalization. "The board meeting," she began. "Cancelled," Sebastian interrupted firmly. "I've already notified Charles. Family security takes precedence." The simple declaration, Sebastian Archer prioritizing family over the corporate empire he'd built, would have seemed unthinkable months earlier. Now it came without hesitation, a value shift so fundamental neither commented on its significance. Within 30 minutes, the estate transformed. Security personnel materialized at strategic points throughout the property. Technicians conducted electronic sweeps for surveillance devices. The helicopter returned to standby position. Sebastian's private security force, former military specialists he rarely deployed, established command center operations in the estate's converted stables. Nadia watched this military precision response with growing alarm. "You think he's coming here? I think we prepare for worst-case scenarios." Sebastian replied carefully. Jonas is resourceful, motivated, and now desperate. Desperation magnifies threat potential. Before she could respond, a sharp pain lanced through Nadia's abdomen. She gasped, doubling forward, one hand braced against the kitchen counter. Sebastian moved instantly to her side. Nadia? What's wrong? Contraction, she managed through gritted teeth. Strong one. Sebastian's calm facade cracked visibly. You're only 26 weeks. It's too early. I know that, Nadia snapped, then immediately regretted her tone. Sorry. Stress probably triggered it. Dr. Chen mentioned this possibility. Sebastian helped her to a chair, activating the estate's medical response team simultaneously. Within minutes, the on-call nurse arrived to check Nadia's vitals, while Sebastian hovered nearby, attempting to project calm, while tension radiated from every line of his body. Blood pressure elevated but within acceptable parameters, the nurse reported. Monitoring for contraction patterns. Nadia closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing techniques while attempting to process the cascading crises. Jonas's escape, security lockdowns, and now possible preterm labor. The timing couldn't be worse, yet felt grimly inevitable, stress manifesting physically at the worst possible moment. After 30 minutes of monitoring, the nurse offered cautious reassurance. Contractions appear irregular and are decreasing in frequency, likely Braxton Hicks intensified by stress. Not active labor, but Dr. Chen recommends complete bed rest for the next 24 hours. Sebastian nodded sharply. Implemented immediately. Full medical team on standby. I don't need a full medical team, Nadia protested weakly. Just quiet and rest. You'll have both, Sebastian assured her, plus whatever additional resources ensure the twins' safety. His tone brooked no argument. Under different circumstances, Nadia might have challenged his autocratic approach. Today, with Jonas somewhere unknown and contractions recently subsided, she accepted the protective measures without further protest. Sebastian established her in the master suite, the most secure room in the main house with bulletproof windows and reinforced doors. He arranged pillows with careful precision, positioned water and communication devices within easy reach, and synchronized the security feeds to display on subtle wall monitors. Excessive much? Nadia observed dryly, noting the military-grade operation center her bedroom had become. Prudent, Sebastian corrected, checking monitor angles. Frank will coordinate security from the command center. I'll be monitoring from my study, but available instantly through this. He indicated a dedicated tablet beside her bed. And I'll be lying here uselessly while everyone else protects us, Nadia concluded, frustration evident in her voice. Sebastian paused his preparations, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. You're doing the most important job of all, he said quietly, placing his hand on her belly where the twins moved actively. Keeping them safe requires keeping you safe. That's not useless, it's essential. The simple reframing, acknowledging her role as vital rather than passive, eased some of Nadia's frustration. She covered his hand with hers, noting how differently they touched now compared to those first awkward encounters months earlier. Be careful, she said softly. Jonas isn't just targeting me or the twins. You're his primary focus, always have been. Sebastian's expression revealed complex emotions, guilt, determination, anger carefully controlled. I'm aware, he replied simply. Rest now. I'll update you hourly. As Sebastian coordinated estate security, Nadia drifted between uneasy sleep and alert anxiety. The contractions subsided completely by mid-afternoon, though Dr. Chen advised continued rest as precaution. Through the tablet Sebastian had provided, Nadia monitored security operations, transformed from passive recipient to active participant in their protection. At precisely 4:30 p.m., Sebastian returned to the master's suite, his expression grave. "We've received communication from Jonas." Nadia struggled to sit upright. "What kind of communication?" "Emails sent through anonymized servers, untraceable." Sebastian handed her his tablet displaying the message. "Sebastian, did you really think concrete walls could contain me? You've always underestimated determination driven by love. Elise deserved better. Her children deserve better. Even the librarian deserves better than you. I'm coming to collect what belongs to my family, not today, not tomorrow, but when you least expect it, when you finally believe you're safe. That's when I'll take Elise's legacy back. No security team can watch forever. No fortress remains impenetrable indefinitely. Time is my ally. You'll grow complacent eventually. All predators do." Nadia read the message twice, cold fear settling in her chest. "He's planning long-term, psychological warfare," Sebastian nodded grimly. "Classic siege mentality. He knows direct confrontation with current security measures would fail, so he's attempting to outlast us through attrition." "Can he?" Nadia asked quietly. "No," Sebastian replied with absolute certainty. "I have resources he can't imagine, determination he can't match, and motivation he doesn't understand." The simple declaration, not corporate bravado but personal commitment, resonated deeply. This wasn't CEO Sebastian Archer making business assurances. This was a father protecting his family with every resource at his command. "What happens now?" Nadia asked. "We adapt," Sebastian said simply. "Maintain security while resuming normal life patterns. Exactly what Jonas doesn't expect. Normal life under armed guard," Nadia observed with a slight smile. "Our version of normal keeps evolving." "Indeed, it does," Sebastian agreed, returning her smile briefly before resuming his focused expression. "The security team is implementing rotating schedules, maintaining vigilance without burnout. We'll establish sustainable protocols for the long term." That evening, despite continued security concerns, Sebastian arranged dinner in the master suite, a proper setting with candles and Nadia's favorite foods, rather than utilitarian meal delivery. This small gesture, creating normalcy within crisis, touched Nadia deeply. The board meeting, she remembered suddenly. "You were supposed to be in Manhattan." "Handled remotely," Sebastian replied, serving her carefully prepared salmon. Charles presented the acquisition details. "I joined via secured video for the vote. And the concerns about your focus?" Sebastian's expression tightened slightly. Addressed directly, "I informed the board that while Archer Pharmaceuticals remains my professional priority, my family's safety represents non-negotiable personal priority." How did they respond? "Mixed reactions," Sebastian admitted. "Some understand completely. Others expressed reservation about my divided attention during critical market phases." "Will they replace you?" Nadia asked directly, recognizing the potential consequences of his choice. Sebastian's slight smile held no warmth. "They can try. I maintain controlling interest. More importantly, I built Archer from concept to global entity. They know my value exceeds their discomfort with my personal circumstances." His confidence wasn't mere arrogance, but accurate assessment of his position. Still, Nadia recognized the risk he'd accepted by prioritizing her and the twins over corporate demands. Another evolution in the man she'd first encountered in that hostile courtroom. After dinner, Sebastian received an update from Frank that transformed his expression from controlled calm to focused intensity. "They've located the missing driver from Jonas's transport van," he reported, reading from his secure tablet. "Alive but beaten severely. Claims Jonas had help from multiple sources, including someone with access to transportation records or resources to purchase assistance," Sebastian qualified. "Money motivates effectively. Does Jonas have substantial financial resources?" "Elise left her estate divided between us," Sebastian explained. "His portion wasn't insignificant, approximately 2 million. He could fund considerable operation with that capital." The revelation added new dimension to their threat assessment. Not merely one unstable individual, but potentially a coordinated effort against them. Nadia unconsciously pressed both hands against her belly, as if physically shielding the twins from this expanding danger. Sebastian noticed the protective gesture. "We're adjusting security protocols accordingly," he assured her. "The team is investigating financial transactions, property acquisitions, any movement that might indicate Jonas's location or intentions." Despite these reassurances, unease settled over the estate like summer fog, pervasive, obscuring clear vision. Jonas's message achieved its primary purpose, disrupting their sense of safety, introducing constant vigilance that would eventually strain even the most robust security operation. As night deepened, Nadia found sleep impossible despite physical exhaustion. Sebastian remained in the adjoining study, monitoring security feeds, periodically checking her comfort with quiet efficiency. Around midnight, she gave up pretense of rest and joined him, settling carefully into an armchair positioned for optimal support. "You should be sleeping," Sebastian observed without looking up from his screens. "So should you," Nadia countered. "Exhaustion helps neither of us." Sebastian acknowledged this with a slight nod, finally turning from his monitoring to give her his full attention. In the subtle lighting, shadows accentuated the tension etched around his eyes, evidence of burden carried largely alone despite their growing partnership. "I've been thinking about Jonas's message," Nadia said quietly. "The phrasing, the timing, as have I," Sebastian admitted. "His reference to collecting what belongs to my family suggests he views the twins as Elise's legacy rather than individual persons, possessions rather than people, which makes him more dangerous," Nadia concluded. "Objectification enables violence." Sebastian's expression tightened at her blunt assessment. "We won't allow that outcome. We need to understand him better," Nadia continued, analytical despite her fear. "Not just as threat, but as person. What drove him to this point? What does he truly want?" "Revenge," Sebastian answered simply. "Against me specifically, but why through the twins? Why not direct action against you personally?" Sebastian considered this carefully. "Because I took Elise from him, in his perception. The twins represent his connection to her, his claim to family legacy. He wants to hurt you the way he was hurt," Nadia theorized. "By taking someone you love." The simple analysis, cutting through security protocols and tactical responses to emotional core, seemed to strike Sebastian with unexpected force. He leaned back, momentarily vulnerable beneath his controlled exterior. "Yes," he acknowledged quietly. "Jonas and Elise were extraordinarily close after their parents died. More than siblings, mutual support system, identity foundation. When she chose me, then died while I was absent, the psychological fracture was profound." Nadia nodded slowly, pieces aligning in her understanding. "So this isn't just about the twins genetically being Elise's. It's about what they represent. Family he believes you stole from him, which makes negotiation impossible," Sebastian concluded grimly. "He doesn't want compromise. He wants restoration of what he's lost, something no one can provide. This insight, clinical yet profound, reframed their understanding of the threat. Not merely security breach, but existential conflict. Not simple kidnapping risk, but complex psychological warfare. Jonas sought not merely the twins, but reconstruction of shattered family identity. Impossible goal driving increasingly desperate methods. We need to go deeper, Nadia decided suddenly. Not just track his movements now, but understand his patterns before. Were there warning signs? People who might know his current intentions? Places of significance he might utilize? Sebastian studied her with something like admiration. You're thinking like an investigator rather than a victim. I'm thinking like a mother, Nadia corrected firmly. These babies aren't arriving for at least 10 more weeks. I won't spend that time paralyzed by fear, waiting for Jonas to make his move. The declaration, strength rather than surrender, shifted their dynamic yet again. Not Sebastian protecting vulnerable Nadia, but partners confronting shared threat with complementary strengths. I'll have the team expand investigation parameters, Sebastian agreed, already messaging Frank. Medical records, psychiatric evaluations, personal connections beyond immediate family. Nadia nodded approval, then added, and we should review Elise's records too, not medical, personal, journals, correspondence, anything that might indicate places or people significant to both siblings. Sebastian hesitated, something vulnerable crossing his features. I've kept her personal effects in storage since her death, never reviewed them myself. The admission, this powerful man avoiding painful remnants of love lost, revealed layers of unresolved grief beneath his controlled exterior. Nadia reached across the space between them, covering his hand with hers. Then we'll review them together, she said gently. Not just for security, but for Alexander and Natalie. They deserve to know their genetic mother through more than Jonas's twisted perspective. Sebastian's fingers tightened around hers, gratitude evident in the gesture. Tomorrow, then, we'll begin deeper investigation while maintaining security protocols. Partners, Nadia confirmed, the word encompassing more than their immediate crisis response. Partners, Sebastian agreed, something softening in his expression despite the circumstances surrounding them. Outside the estate's perimeter, security teams conducted hourly sweeps, detecting nothing unusual in the summer night. Surveillance cameras monitored approach roads, thermal sensors scanned wooded boundaries, armed personnel maintained vigilant watch. Within this protective enclosure, two people found unexpected connection through shared purpose, keeping safe the children created through manipulation but now cherished through choice. Yet somewhere beyond their security perimeter, Jonas Renner waited, planned, prepared. His message promised patience, the predator's most dangerous quality, not immediate attack, but calculated waiting, leveraging time against even the most robust defenses. The shadows he cast stretched longer than physical threat, psychological warfare designed to exhaust through constant vigilance. The true battle had only begun, not siege against fortress, but endurance contest between opposing determinations. Jonas's obsessive need for restoration versus Sebastian and Nadia's resolute protection of family, formed through chaos, but strengthened through choice. The battle for family has just begun. Click part 2 now, and subscribe so you don't miss what unfolds next.